Chapter 376. Ning Shu blocked, lost Tibetan Mastiff, and shouted, following the cool breeze. Following the cool breeze, S body immediately stiffened. He stared at Ning Shu and did not deny it. You're really amazing. He had just opened a new account not long ago and wanted to quickly level up. He had even spent money to buy a lot of equipment, but this crazy woman had come knocking on his door again. Crazy. Ning Shu immediately laughed and happily said, "It really is you. I didn't think that you would change to a new account, and your level is not bad." Following the cool breeze, looked at the woman who was as happy as an old friend. His heart was filled with disgust. Why didn't this crazy woman just go and die? Ning Shu asked again, "Is your ID and lost Mimi a couple account?" Following the cool breeze, go and die, crazy woman. Ning Shu ignored, following the cool breeze, S twisted face and said with admiration, "I really didn't think that you would actually give up on, following the cool breeze. This is a godly account. Being killed by a crazy woman like you to the point that I can't even level up. What's the point of having it?" Following the cool breeze, S' heart was filled with hatred for this woman. At the same time, he felt that being entangled by this crazy woman was truly a tragedy. For a moment, following the cool breeze, was somewhat dispirited. He had originally wanted to subdue this woman in the real world, but he did not think that he would not be able to find such a person. Following the cool breeze, S' heart was filled with curses. Ning Shu smacked his lips and said, "Actually, I still like your, following the cool breeze, name. Why did you have to be so stubborn and insist on having the same style as, Lost Mimi? What a pity. Why did you have to be called a Tibetan Mastiff? Following the cool breeze, go and die bitch. I don't want to chat with you. After all, I'm the first person to find you. I don't have anything to say. You probably didn't tell your followers about this account, right? After all, it's not a good thing to start a new account. Wait until you reach the top again and appear in front of them as a god." Ning Shu acted as if he was chatting with an old friend. Following the breeze, did not want to bother with her at all. He released his own spirit beast and prepared to leave. Ning Shu directly released the 1,000-mile vine and entangled, following the breeze. Then, Ning Shu cut off all of following the breeze S levels, leaving nothing behind. Following the cool breeze, once again returned to the new book village to stay. Following the cool breeze, now felt more melancholy than hatred. Just what kind of power supported this woman to find trouble with him again and again, insisting on killing him, again and again without knowing fatigue? Ning Shu suddenly liked the feeling of a cat chasing a mouse. Every time, following the cool breeze, leveled up, Ning Shu would suddenly appear and kill, following the cool breeze, change accounts and kill again, and then kill again, and then kill again, and then kill again. Following the cool breeze, did not even know how many times he had been killed by this crazy woman. Right now, he did not even have the slightest bit of passion to level up. Every time he leveled up, this woman would appear on time and kill him once. After killing him, she would chat with him as if they were good friends. Crazy. No matter how he changed accounts, this crazy woman would always be able to find him. What the hell was wrong with this person? Following the cool breeze, suspected that this woman was a hacker. That was why she could find him so accurately. What kind of spirit was this? Numb. Ning Shu kept his broadsword and comforted, following the cool breeze, by saying, "I believe that you will be able to level up very quickly. Good luck, I think very highly of you." Following the cool breeze, did not appear in the game anymore. Ning Shu could not find the target and would always invade the game's main system without leaving a trace, trying to filter out the possible ID of following the cool breeze. But Ning Shu did not discover following the cool breeze. Ning Shu did not believe that following the cool breeze would just leave like this. As a high and mighty young master of a rich family, a young master with an extremely high self-esteem would just leave like this? Ning Shu even ran to the following dragon gang to find following the cool breeze, but was told that following the cool breeze would not play this game anymore. Not only did following the cool breeze not appear, Lost Mimi and Ice Clear Lotus also did not appear. Could it be that they went to develop feelings in the real world? She had a premonition that this would be another love story with pink bubbles. However, she really couldn't care less about the things in the real world. Ning Shu didn't want to care too much about things outside of the quest. All the grudges were in the game. Since Blown with the Wind wouldn't appear in the game, Ning Shu could not care less. However, she felt that following the cool breeze gave up too easily. It gave Ning Shu a very uneasy feeling. Of course, Ning Shu did not know that in following the cool breeze's heart, she was a crazy woman. Moreover, she was a crazy woman. Moreover, following the cool breeze felt that Ning Shu had power in the real world. In addition, he could not compete with Ning Shu in the game. It was not like this was the only game. In any case, following the cool breeze did not want to see this crazy woman at all. He took his little girlfriend and directly left. Lost Mimi felt that she could not leave her good friend behind. She brought the dark, ice-clear Lotus by her side. In the real world, Lost Mimi and Ice-Clear Lotus were good friends. However, when the two girls fell in love with the same boy, it was obvious what would happen. Especially when one of them had turned dark. Ning Shu did not train and clear dungeons anymore. Her level was already very high. She spent most of her time learning the code. She wanted to strive for perfection. She wanted to completely master the whole thing so that it would be easier to complete the mission in the future. Who knows, maybe this knowledge would be of great use. Not long after, the Following the Dragon gang also disbanded. Several members of Following the Cool Breeze also left the game. After all, playing the game had the meaning of accompanying the Crown Prince. Now that the Crown Prince was no longer here, there was no meaning in staying. Ning Shu's heart was somewhat unsure whether or not this mission was completed. This was because the original owner wanted to be a qualified and responsible NPC. However, she copied an NPC to replace her. If it was always an NPC, Ning Shu did not feel that the mission would be difficult to complete. Moreover, if the NPC had any abnormalities, it would be very easy to be scanned by the main game system and would be erased. However, the identity of a player was different. Moreover, Ning Shu felt that if the original owner came back to live in the game as a player, she would be able to communicate with others. She would not be confined to one place and could only move around in the area she was responsible for. The game world was very big, she could go anywhere she wanted. However, Ning Shu arbitrarily changed the original owner's wishes. Could the mission be considered completed? Ding, mission completed. Leaving the mission world. The sound of 2333 rang out. Ning Shu's head buzzed for a moment. When she remembered again, she was already in the system space. After staying in the game for so long, Ning Shu was somewhat unable to distinguish between reality and illusion. As usual, Ning Shu did not care about anything and went to sleep first. In a world, no matter how difficult the mission was, there would be many people and many things to do. If one did not organize everything for a long time, all the things would accumulate in one's heart. It would be unbearable. People with mental problems would see things that others could not see. Auditory hallucinations or visual hallucinations would cause them to have an emotional breakdown. Moreover, after experiencing so many worlds. Chapter 377. After a comfortable sleep, Ning Shu woke up. First, he took a watering can and sprinkled some water on the small potted plant. Then, he took a linen cloth and wiped the dust on the bookshelf. Although there was no dust in the system space, Ning Shu still carefully cleaned it. The most regrettable thing was that the soul state couldn't sweat. If he sweated, it would be very refreshing to sweat. After finishing, Ning Shu said, "Let's look at the points this time." Okay. Ning Shu's status panel appeared in front of him. Number 23333 Name, Ning Shu, Beginner Task Taker, Age, 27 points, 170,000 30,000 Soul, 200 Life, 60 Wisdom, 80 Charm, 3 Luck, 34 Mental Power, 120 Martial Power, 40 Faith, 1 Qualifications, 26 Merit, 15-20 Skills, 5 Rings Shooting Technique, Trash Fighting Technique, Absolute Martial Arts Beginner Rookie Honorary Title, War God Empress, Selfless Ancestor Aura, Mother of the World, Queen's Blessing, Model Worker Sister, Chen Shi's Blessing, Leader Aura, Grass Blessing, Complete NPC's Wish, Be a Dutiful NPC. Let Sui Qingfeng not use her at will. Let Sui Qingfeng not be able to survive in the game. Mission Completion Progress, 80. Obtained 5 attribute points. Ning Shu saw that the mission progress was only 80. The experience was only 30,000. It could be said that it was the lowest as an official task taker. Moreover, the attribute points were only 5. The last time it was 25 points. Ning Shu pursed his lips. He knew that this mission was considered a failure. People really couldn't be self-righteous. The original owner wanted to be a dutiful NPC, but she let the original owner break away from the identity of an NPC. Ning Shu stood in his position and felt that this was a very good way of life. But for the original owner, it was not necessarily so. The original owner was a programming code born from the game's main system. Breaking away from the identity of an NPC would make her feel at a loss. My honey, the other's arsenic. Fortunately, Ning Shu learned the code. The original owner could return to her NPC identity. Otherwise, this mission would be considered a failure. Generally speaking, the things that Ning Shu learned would be left to the original owner. The original owner would have this skill, and so would Ning Shu. Ning Shu took a deep breath. He felt that he could not be so self-righteous in the future. Even though that was what he thought, Ning Shu still felt a bit disappointed because he hadn't obtained much from this world. 30,000 experience points and 5 attribute points. Ning Shu remained silent for a while. Then, he added all 5 attribute points to wisdom, and the attribute panel changed. Serial number, 23333 Name, Ning Shu, Beginner Mission Taker, Age, 27 points, 200,000 Soul Value, 200 HP, 60 Wisdom, 805 Charm, 3 Luck, 34 Spiritual Power, 120 Combat Power, 40 Faith, 1 Aptitude, 26 Merit, 35 Skills, 5th Ring Spear Technique, Trash Fighting Technique, Peerless Martial Arts Novice. Honorary Title, Goddess of War, Selfless Ancestor Aura, Mother of the World, Queen's Blessing, Model Worker, Chen Shi's Blessing, Leader's Aura, Grass Blessing. Seeing Ning Shu's disappointment, 23333 said, the original owner's wish is what she wants the most. You don't have to change her wish. I know. I was stupid this time. I took it for granted. Ning Shu nodded. 23333 was silent for a while. Then, he comforted Ning Shu, but at that time, it was the best choice. It didn't matter if you lost a few points. The most important thing was still your life. 70 points is the mission standard. Actually, missions are also graded according to their levels. For example, Pass, Excellent, and Perfect. According to the 4 levels, the points and attributes awarded are different. There's such a thing. Ning Shu was stunned. 23333 said, actually, you have a quest that gives you a perfect title. It's a primitive society. So, the points and attributes are higher. But this NPC quest can only be considered pass. Your way of doing things didn't make the original owner very happy, but completing the latter part of the quest can only be considered pass. Ning Shu nodded to show that he understood. Ning Shu opened the exchange shop and browsed through the items available. He wanted to see if there was anything that he could afford and that was more practical. After browsing for a while, Ning Shu found something called the Calm Aura. It was an item that allowed the player to remain calm. Ning Shu was very fond of the aura, but it was very expensive. It cost 150,000 points. Ning Shu had worked so hard to earn 200,000 points. If he bought the Calm Aura, he would be back to square one. Ning Shu pursed his lips. After a painful struggle, he finally bought the Calm Aura. Without his life, points were nothing. Ning Shu clicked on the exchange button. Then, he saw his points jump violently. In the end, he only had 50,000 points left. However, with the aura on him, Ning Shu instantly felt his mind clear up. Even his depressed mood dissipated a little. His heart was calm and steady. However, Ning Shu knew that these were all supplementary effects. In the end, he still had to rely on himself to complete the quest. Ning Shu distributed some points and exchanged them for fasting pills, water, medicine, and detoxification pills. After everything was prepared, Ning Shu began to cultivate his soul. Ning Shu had always been cultivating peerless martial arts. First, Ning Shu felt that this thing was not bad. After so long, he had developed feelings for it. He also felt that this secret manual must be very powerful. It must be. Second, Ning Shu did not have enough points to exchange for high-level soul cultivation secret manuals. Secret manuals could easily cost hundreds of thousands or even millions of points. Ning Shu could only look at them. Therefore, the same was true for mission takers. The stronger the person, the more resources they had. The weaker the person, the weaker they became. In the end, they would be eliminated. Ning Shu waited until her soul was full before she stopped cultivating. Her soul was much stronger than when she first entered the system space. When this soul was able to condense into a physical body, it would be much easier to cultivate peerless martial arts. I can do it, Ning Shu thought to himself. He would continue on the path of a mission taker. Then he would become an intermediate mission taker. Then he would become an advanced mission taker. He would travel through countless worlds. Ning Shu's previously depressed heart was now boiling with blood. Ahead of him was a new journey. Our goal is, the Sea of Stars. 2333 System Sir, enter the mission world. Ning Shu said 2333. 2333 saw that Ning Shu had swept away his dispirited appearance. His tone also relaxed a little. Okay. Good luck, Ning Shu. Ning Shu felt his mind go blank. When he could feel again, he found himself lying on a wooden bed. Around him were antique furniture and decorations. Ning Shu knew that this mission should be set in ancient times. He just did not know what the original owner's wish was. Chapter 378. Ning Shu looked around and found that the things around him were very exquisite. The host was wearing a satin coat with a floral pattern. The stitches were so fine that there was no hair at all. It seemed that the host was either rich or noble. Ning Shu closed his eyes and began to end the plot. The host was called Wei Lingxian. She was the wife of An Yu, the first-ranked general of Xinwei. They had a son and a daughter. They respected their mother-in-law and treated the servants well. They loved each other very much and didn't have a concubine in the backyard. There was a civil riot in Yunzhou. An Yu, the general of Xinwei, was ordered to rebel in Yunzhou. Yunzhou was the fief of the emperor's half-brother. After the emperor got the news, he hurriedly asked An Yu to suppress the rebels. An Yu hurried to Yunzhou and found that the whole family of the king of Yen had died in the battle. On his way back, An Yu met the orphans of the king of Yen. One of them was the daughter of the king of Yen, Princess Mingzhu, and the other was the youngest son of the king of Yen. In order to protect his only son, King of Yen ordered his beloved daughter, Princess Mingzhu, to protect his son and escape from the mansion that was about to be attacked by the rebels. Princess Mingzhu would lose her family overnight. If it weren't for her father's wish, she would have left with them. She disguised herself with her maid and encountered bandits. She was in great danger and was saved by Yu. Yu appeared in front of Princess Mingzhu like a god. He made Princess Mingzhu, who had lost everything, feel safe and warm. When she was desperate, Yu saw a glimmer of hope. Like a god, Yu gave Princess Mingzhu a new life and made her feel warm again. Yu thought that he was responsible for protecting King of Yan's orphans since he failed to save them, so he escorted them all the way to the capital. Yu often comforted Princess Mingzhu when he saw that she was in pain because of the loss of her family. Princess Mingzhu was the same age as his daughter. She comforted her patiently when she saw this 16-year-old girl suffer such a thing. Yu's care and love made Princess Mingzhu fall in love with him. She had feelings for Yu, but she had to suppress her feelings because of her status. When they arrived in the capital, Yu took Princess Mingzhu and the little prince to the general's mansion. Yu felt responsible for Princess Mingzhu. The general's mansion welcomed Princess Mingzhu very much. Yu even specially built a courtyard for Princess Mingzhu so that she could live alone. He said that he must let Princess Mingzhu feel the warmth of home. Princess Mingzhu and Lingyun, who was of the same age, became good friends. Everyone in the general's mansion liked this weak but strong girl who shouldered the responsibility of revitalizing King Yan's mansion. Wei Lingxian's son, Yu, was 17 years old. He was in love with Princess Mingzhu, who was as gentle as water. Under the encouragement of his sister, Lingyun, he confessed to Princess Mingzhu. However, Princess Mingzhu loved Yu's father, Yu. Wei Lingxian found out about the relationship between her husband and Princess Mingzhu. She was dissatisfied with Princess Mingzhu and even did some things to stop Yu and Princess Mingzhu from getting together. She went to the palace to persuade the Empress Dowager to give Princess Mingzhu a marriage. The Empress Dowager arranged a good marriage for Princess Mingzhu, who was from a noble family in the capital. But when Princess Mingzhu heard the news, she almost collapsed. She knelt in front of the Empress Dowager and begged her to withdraw the engagement. She also told the Empress Dowager that she liked Yu and that she could only marry Yu in this life. The Empress Dowager was shocked and angry. Princess Mingzhu was going to be a concubine, and she was going to marry a man who was about the same age as her father. It would damage the social order of the imperial court. The Empress Dowager naturally wouldn't allow it. However, Princess Mingzhu said that she and Yu were in love with each other. It was true love. True love was not wrong. Princess Mingzhu knelt in front of Wei Lingxian and confessed that she loved Yu. She would rather be a concubine and stay with Yu like a cat or a dog. She only begged Wei Lingxian to forgive her. Wei Lingxian trembled with anger. Yu, who loved Princess Mingzhu, didn't agree. The Empress Dowager didn't dare to let a princess be a concubine. Lingyun blamed her good friend for letting her brother down and stealing her father. When Yu saw that everyone disapproved of his relationship with Princess Mingzhu and everyone was in pain because of it, he volunteered to go to war with a sorrowful heart. Princess Mingzhu secretly ran out of the capital and went to the battlefield alone to find Yu. Because of love, Yu was depressed. Yu, who lost the battle, decided to kill himself. At this time, Princess Mingzhu appeared in front of Yu. When they saw each other, they felt as if they had been separated for a lifetime. They couldn't contain their feelings anymore and decided not to be separated again. They survived together, but what greeted them was still overwhelming opposition. Princess Mingzhu became the target of public criticism. Princess Mingzhu didn't care about her status and felt wronged. She only hoped to resolve the knot in people's hearts with sincerity. In the end, she moved the Empress Dowager, who was the most opposed. Princess Mingzhu became Yu's concubine. Everyone was shocked by her bravery and fearlessness. Even the Empress Dowager supported her. Wei Lingxian humiliated and embarrassed Princess Mingzhu in all kinds of ways. This woman, who had lost almost everything, tortured Princess Mingzhu even more. Princess Mingzhu silently endured it, hoping to move Wei Lingxian with her true feelings. And Yu, who liked Princess Mingzhu, was disheartened and got married in a fit of anger. He ignored his newly married wife and went to the battlefield. And Yu knew his son's thoughts. In order to protect his son, he went to the battlefield with Princess Mingzhu. In the chaos, he was unfortunately shot and died in order to save Yu. And Yu forgave his father. When Princess Mingzhu saw that Yu was dead, she wanted to die in the same year, month, and day with him. She entrusted her younger brother, the crown prince, to Yu and committed suicide. After Princess Mingzhu's death, the Empress Dowager found out about it. She thought that Princess Mingzhu was loyal and devoted, so she buried Princess Mingzhu with Yu in the same grave. Wei Lingxian, the legal wife, was very embarrassed. Princess Mingzhu, who went to the battlefield and had her whole family died, had an illicit relationship with a man during her filial period. After her death, she was known as a loyal, brave, and strong woman. It put a hypocritical hat on this beautiful love story that had no regard for human relations. An old man and a simple and beautiful woman hurt everyone's love. Wei Lingxian's husband didn't love her, and her children were unfilial. She was known as a jealous woman. After her death, she couldn't be buried with her husband because he already had another woman. Even though the two of them were dead, Wei Lingxian still felt like a joke. She lived in misery. She was a woman who had nothing. How enviable Wei Lingxian was in the past was how pitiful she was now. His daughter and son both sided with the concubine. Even his son's daughter-in-law, who had just married his son, helped Princess Mingzhu and asked her not to be so cruel to Mingzhu. Ning Shu was speechless. Well, this story can be summarized as follows. I was kind enough to take in my daughter's lonely and helpless best friend, but my daughter's best friend stole my man and seduced my son's heart, causing my family to be ruined and everyone to die. Chapter 379. This was a story of a hero saving a damsel in distress. And Yu was a hero to Princess Mingzhu. She would give herself to him for saving her life. Ning Shu thought, ha ha ha, Princess Mingzhu had a noble status, but she knelt down to others. She should live in the palace, but she chose to live in the home of an official. She put the burden of revitalizing King Yan's residence on the shoulders of a 7-year-old child, but she loved him all day long. There were also servants who didn't care about status. He had a premonition that true love was about to hit him. But when Ning Shu saw the original owner's wish, he was stunned. Because the original owner's wish was like this. Wei Lingxian's wish, there was no content at all. You have no requirements. How am I supposed to help you? 2333, what's wrong? Ning Shu asked 2333, what's with Wei Lingxian's wish? 2333 said, the original owner didn't even know what she should wish for. Her resentment couldn't be alleviated. She was filial to her mother-in-law and worked hard at home. She let Yu, who was fighting outside, have nothing to worry about, not to mention the 2 children. But she had nothing left. No matter how good she was to her mother-in-law, she only had her son and grandson in her heart. In the end, she agreed to let Princess Mingzhu become a concubine. Not to mention her husband, who was in love with her for more than 10 years, almost 20 years. He didn't even have a concubine. I've lost everyone. What kind of wish can I have? There's nothing sadder than a dead heart. 2333 said, this is an intermediate task. The person who asked for it doesn't have any specific requirements. It's the most difficult task. Ning Shu was speechless. Damn it. She had no regrets for love. She was crazy for love. She didn't even recognize her own family when she was in love. This task was really annoying. Ning Shu scratched his head. There were some strands of hair on his hand. Every time Yu went to war, the original owner would wait for him to come back uneasily. She was afraid that something would happen to Yu on the battlefield. She had to pretend to be calm and take care of the general's residence. Ning Shu got up from the bed and looked in the bronze mirror. Wei Lingxian looked graceful and elegant. She was a dignified woman who knew when to advance and retreat. She was someone who could take care of her family well. In a feudal society, she was a woman who was qualified to be the matron of a clan. Previously, when Yu refused to take in a concubine because of Wei Lingxian, all the noble ladies in the capital were extremely envious. Wei Lingxian also said that she wanted Yu to take in a few concubines, but Yu refused all of them. Yu, a mighty general, was actually called henpecked, but Wei Lingxian felt sweet inside. She just didn't think that Yu would be so crazy as to fall in love with a woman who was the same age as her daughter. What was Wei Lingxian? Humans were different from animals. Humans had constraints and morals, responsibilities and morals. They relied on their biological instincts to do whatever they wanted. They were beasts. With a creak, the carved door opened, interrupting Ning Shu's thoughts. A delicate and pretty maidservant entered. She was about 17 or 18 years old. She looked very mature between her eyebrows, and her footsteps were light and unhurried. Seeing Ning Shu sitting in front of the bronze mirror, Zhu walked over with a smile. "Madam, you're up." Ning Shu nodded and said, "Help me wash up." Zhu helped Ning Shu wash up. She skillfully combed Ning Shu's hair and said, "Madam, you took a long nap this afternoon. It's time for dinner now. Old madam told me to wake you up." Ning Shu made a sound of acknowledgement and stood up. Zhu pulled down the fallen hair from the ivory comb and twisted it together, not wanting Ning Shu to see. "Zhu, am I getting old again?" Strictly speaking, Wei Lingxian was now a middle-aged woman. After all, her son was already 17 years old. Zhu smiled and said, "In Zhu's heart, madam will always be the most beautiful." Ning Shu shook his head. A beautiful figure floated in like a butterfly. "Mother." Lingyun reached out and held Ning Shu's hand. "Grandmother asked me to come and see what's wrong with you today." "Mother, are you okay?" Ning Shu looked at Lingyun. She was pretty and cute. When Princess Mingzhu entered the general's manor, they became good friends. When her mother was sad, Lingyun ran to Princess Mingzhu's courtyard. Even if she didn't comfort her mother, she shouldn't have gone to the courtyard that made her mother's heart ache. Everyone said that daughters were considerate, but in the end, everyone was moved by Princess Mingzhu's sincerity and blamed the original owner of this body for being vicious and jealous. Lingyun noticed that Ning Shu was staring at her. His eyes were scrutinizing and indifferent. She shook Ning Shu's arm uneasily and asked, "Mother, what's wrong?" A smile appeared on Ning Shu's face. She was elegant and magnanimous as she said, "Mother is thinking about it again. Lingyun is already a big girl and should have a husband's family. Mother is thinking about what kind of husband's family to find for you." Lingyun was a naive girl. She grew up in a harmonious family. She didn't realize that Princess Mingzhu had become her father's concubine and hurt her mother. It was not just a matter of adding a pair of chopsticks. Therefore, naive and innocent people hurt people the most. Lingyun was like this, and so was Princess Mingzhu. When Lingyun heard that Ning Shu wanted to find a husband for her, she was a little shy. However, she said in a natural and unrestrained manner, "Lingyun wants to find a man like father, indomitable, like father to mother, wholeheartedly devoted." Hearing this, Ning Shu didn't say anything. His body was filled with sadness and numbness. There was also fear. He feared the arrival of Princess Mingzhu, who was about to destroy everything. Even Ning Shu was affected by the sadness, hesitation, hatred, and pain that surged out of his body. Ever since his soul became stronger, he was rarely affected by the original owner's plot. But now, these emotions were overwhelming. His heart was in sharp pain. The pain made Ning Shu's body bend. He couldn't help but cover his chest. It felt like there were countless needles pricking his heart. The pain made the veins on Ning Shu's forehead bulge. The blood in his body was cold. So cold. Ning Shu staggered. And Lingyun supported Ning Shu. Seeing her mother's pale face and cold sweat, she anxiously said, "Mother, are you okay?" Zhu also came over to support Ning Shu. Ning Shu said weakly, "Help me sit on the bed." And Lingyun and Zhu helped Ning Shu sit on the bed. Ning Shu covered his chest and took deep breaths to calm his emotions. A cool feeling flowed into his heart, calming the pain and anxiety in his heart. Ning Shu knew that this was the effect of the calm aura that she had spent 150,000 points on. The original owner of the body had spent day after day with these emotions. How painful it must have been. Chapter 380. This strong emotion slowly faded away, but Ning Shu didn't have any strength left in his body. His entire body was covered in cold sweat. Ning Shu was still thinking about practicing the peerless martial arts so that this body would be even more powerful. "Mother, are you all right?" And Lingyun looked at Ning Shu with a face full of worry and concern. She had never seen her mother like this before. And Lingyun's heart was still very flustered, and her pillar of support mother suddenly became like this. Ning Shu used a silk handkerchief to wipe the cold sweat on his face and said, "I'm fine. I'll rest for a bit. You and grandmother can eat dinner first. Go, mother wants to rest." In the end, Lingyun left first, occasionally turning back to look at Ning Shu. Zhu squeezed out a handkerchief for Ning Shu and helped Ning Shu wipe his face. Ning Shu asked, "Madam, do you want me to call a doctor to take a look?" This servant sees that Madam's complexion doesn't look too good. Ning Shu shook his head. His heart was still faintly aching. After a while, the sound of footsteps could be heard from outside the room. Following that, a large group of people walked in. Walking at the front was an old woman holding a mahogany cane. She wore dark red clothes and a black embroidered headband on her head. In the middle of the headband was an emerald. She looked like a dignified and wealthy old woman. The one supporting the old woman was Lingyun. Beside her was the tall and delicate Yu. Yu and Lingyun. Ning Shu shouted, "Mother! Mother, grandmother has come to see you," and Lingyun said to Ning Shu. Ning Shu saw that Madame Shen had come over. He held on to Zhu's hand and struggled to stand up. The old woman walked over with her cane and pressed down on Ning Shu. She said, "Don't get up. Your complexion doesn't look too good. Have you been working too hard recently?" Ning Shu took advantage of the situation to sit down. His expression was very respectful. His eyebrows were tinged with exhaustion as he said, "Many thanks for mother's concern. Your daughter-in-law does feel a bit tired." The old woman sat on a stool beside the bed and said, "I know you're worried about Yu. It's fine. This old woman isn't worried, so you don't have to worry. Yu is a person with good fortune." Ning Shu was speechless. "I'm afraid you'll be sending your child off." Ning Shu could only force out a smile and beckoned to Lingyun. Lingyun walked in front of Ning Shu. Ning Shu held Lingyun's hand and turned his head to speak to Chen Shi. "Mother, daughter-in-law's health hasn't been very good recently. Lingyun is not young anymore and should be betrothed to someone else after the new year. Lingyun should learn how to manage a household. Can I trouble Granny to teach Lingyun?" Ning Shu was panting heavily as he spoke. His face was sallow, and his forehead was dripping with sweat. He looked especially haggard. Lingyun and Yu felt uneasy in their hearts. "Mother, rest well. Little sister and I will definitely be fine," Yu hurriedly said. Ning Shu looked at Yu and his pupils shrank. Under Lingyun's instigation, he confessed to Princess Mingzhu, but was rejected by Princess Mingyue. The original owner of the body called Yu in front of him and told her not to think about having any entanglements with Mingzhu. Mingzhu was a princess of the imperial family and they were not worthy of her. Yu was originally rejected by the woman who was as gentle as water, and then Wei Lingxian said this. Moreover, her own mother went to the palace to persuade the Empress Dowager to bestow a marriage to Princess Mingzhu. She actually hated the original owner of the body for obstructing her. To be hated by her own child, wasn't this cutting into Wei Lingxian's flesh? Ning Shu only smiled in the face of Yu's concern and looked at Chen Shi. Chen Shi put her hands on her walking stick and nodded, "All right, you rest well. I'll teach Lingyun how to manage a household for the time being." Ning Shu struggled to get up. He opened the cabinet and placed the account book and the storehouse key on the table, saying, "I'll have to trouble Granny." Chen Shi made a sound of acknowledgement and had Lingyun take the account book and the key. Chen Shi stood up and the maidservant next to her immediately supported her. Chen Shi comforted Ning Shu with a few words and told him to rest well. She said that Yu was fine and that he shouldn't fall ill. Ning Shu only nodded. He was respectful and filial towards Chen Shi. Lingyun held the account book and said to Ning Shu, "Mother, I'll bring you some food." Ning Shu smiled, "All right." When the group left the room, Ning Shu had Zhu close the door. "I'll sleep first. No one is to disturb me." Zhu nodded and closed the door. She stood guard at the door. Ning Shu sat cross-legged on the bed. The original owner of the body took care of the entire general's household in an orderly manner. All the expenses and income were recorded. Every sum was given to Chen Shi for review. If there were any large expenses, Chen Shi would ask for instructions. Rather than saying that Wei Lingxian managed the general's household, it was better to say that the true authority of the household was in Chen Shi's hands. In Chen Shi's eyes, Wei Lingxian, this daughter-in-law, was transparent. Wei Lingxian had almost no selfish motives for the family. She attentively served and took care of her mother-in-law. Chen Shi was very satisfied with Wei Lingxian as a daughter-in-law. She didn't say anything when her son didn't take a concubine. Wei Lingxian respected and loved Chen Shi even more. Yu often went to war. Wei Lingxian spent more time with her mother-in-law than her husband. They were family. But when it came to her son, Chen Shi gave up on Wei Lingxian. In fact, this was something that didn't need to be considered. Ning Shu didn't have the patience to tire himself out every day for the general's household. Everyone else was enjoying themselves. Everything was orderly. When they were hungry, they had food to eat. When they were thirsty, they had warm water. Every day, their clothes were clean and fragrant. This kind of environment was painstakingly created by the original owner of the body. In the end, these people all accused her of being vicious and crazy. When one was full and warm, one would think of lust. Everything could be solved by oneself. Ning Shu began to cultivate the ultimate martial arts, but he didn't achieve anything. However, with the calm halo, Ning Shu was less affected by the original owner's emotions. The original owner's resentment and sadness were very strong. Ning Shu could only sigh. When a person's heart wasn't with them, everything they did would be in vain. Ning Shu really didn't have a clue about this mission. Take revenge on Yu, Princess Mingzhu, and all the people who hurt Wei Lingxian. But the people who hurt Wei Lingxian were the people she loved the most. But if he didn't do anything, how was he going to complete this mission? Ning Shu realized that even if he became Wei Lingxian, he might not be able to do a better job than Wei Lingxian. No matter what he did, he had to deal with Princess Mingyu, this pure, beautiful, and true woman. Princess Mingyu was the prince's daughter and the emperor's niece. In this feudal society where the emperor's orders were greater than heaven, to deal with a princess of such high status, not only did he have to maintain his reputation as a virtuous person, but he also had to punish Princess Mingyu. It was a little difficult. The original owner of the body was a virtuous woman who supported the family. However, because of the incident with Princess Mingzhu, she was labeled as a vicious, jealous, tormented, and humiliated Princess Mingzhu. Princess Mingzhu's tolerance and kindness earned her the pity of everyone in the general's household. Ningxu, he felt that this mission was really a pain in the ass. He had no direction at all. Moreover, Ningxu couldn't tell what the original owner's attitude towards Yu was. Was it hate, love, or a mixture of love and hate? There was no hint. Chapter 381. Ningxu began his life of recuperation. Old Madame Fu called a doctor to see Ningxu. The doctor took his pulse and said that his heart was damaged, and he was overthinking. To put it bluntly, he was thinking too much. When old Madame Fu came to see Ningxu, Ningxu said to old Madame Fu, "Mother, I don't know why, but I have a bad feeling this time. I didn't have it before. Mother, is there something wrong within you?" Madame Chen slammed her walking stick on the ground and said, "What can happen? And you hasn't encountered any major problems. This is just a civil disturbance. A group of rioters took advantage of the opportunity to cause trouble. What can happen?" Ningxu saw that old Madame Fu was a bit haggard. He guessed that it was because she had to manage the backyard of the general's mansion and teach Lingyun how to manage the household. Hearing old Madame Fu's lecture, Ningxu immediately said, "Yes, mother. Daughter-in-law is thinking too much." Old Madame Fu looked at Ningxu's yellow face and sickly appearance. She really couldn't let her manage the backyard. Lingyun, who was forced by old Madame Fu to learn how to manage the backyard, was simply flustered. She ran to Ningxu and cried to Ningxu, "Mother, get better quickly. I really can't do it." Ningxu stretched out her hand and touched Lingyun's head. She said with a smile, "You are my daughter. If mother can do it, you can also do it. When mother first learned, I was also like this. I was reprimanded by your grandmother until I cried. Don't you see that mother is doing well now? What kind of thoughts did she have to say that her mother was vicious? The original owner was crazy, but it wasn't because of you two." Ningxu didn't have any feelings for the two children. They were completely ungrateful. Fortunately, they were born and raised. Without the company of a husband, they had to serve their mother-in-law and take care of their two children. In the end, they couldn't resist Princess Mingzhu's two sentences. Was Mingzhu beautiful and pure, or did she feel that the original owner's crazy appearance made them feel ashamed? Crows even know how to reciprocate. Lingyun looked pitiful and her eyes were filled with tears. However, Ningxu's eyes were indifferent. He had a loving and teasing expression on his face. "Lingyun is a big girl now. You can't cry. Although it's tough now, it's better than going to your in-laws to suffer." Lingyun pouted and arched her body in Ningxu's embrace. She said coquettishly, "Mother, I want to always be with you." Ningxu smiled. How can a girl stay at home all the time? Lingyun saw that Ningxu had no intention of relenting, so she could only continue to learn how to manage a household. It was just that she was still young, so she was flustered. This caused the servants of the general's residence to become impatient as well. In the past, they all knew what they should do, but when Lingyun took over and faced the huge general's residence, they were completely dumbfounded. Chen Shi was already quite old, and seeing Lingyun so busy, she could only focus on managing. This caused Chen Shi's mental state to not be as good as before. Even Yu came to complain to Ningxu. She said that her clothes were sent over before they were ironed. Sometimes, she didn't even get to drink water. Ningxu looked at this child. He had handsome eyebrows and looked like Yu. There was a hint of immaturity between his eyebrows. In ancient times, a 17-year-old boy should be able to take responsibility. However, Yu had nothing to do. Every day, she calmly practiced martial arts. His confession was rejected by Princess Mingzhu. When he was depressed, he made bad friends and got addicted to gambling. Later, he even stole the original owner's money to gamble. Another spoiled child. Faced with Yu's complaints, Ning Shu only said, "Your younger sister is the one managing the household. There are some things that she doesn't do well. You have to be more tolerant." "Mother, are you feeling better?" Yu asked Ning Shu. Ning Shu said, "Mother is fine. You don't have to worry." Ning Shu looked at Yu's back. Each and every one of them was soaking in a honey pot. "This old lady should serve you all." "Nonsense." Zhu walked in with a face full of joy. Ning Shu said, "Madam, the general has returned in triumph." Ning Shu's face lit up with joy. He quickly said, "Help me dress." "Okay." Zhu responded and busily helped Ning Shu dress, wash, and dress. When they arrived at the entrance of the general's estate, the matriarch was already waiting for them. Her face was full of joy. When she saw Ning Shu, her expression became better. She said, "See, I told you that nothing would happen to you." Ning Shu let out a long sigh of relief. In a light tone, he said, "It's good that you're back. It's good that you're back." Mother-in-law, daughter-in-law, the two children, and the servants of the general's estate were waiting at the entrance. Ning Shu looked in the direction of the palace. Yu and Princess Mingzhu were probably in the palace. The Empress Dowager felt sorry for the siblings and arranged for them to stay. Along the way, Yu saw the weak and helpless Princess Mingyue and felt that it was his duty to take care of her. He begged the Empress Dowager to let the princess and the crown prince stay in the general's estate temporarily. Ning Shu wanted to vomit blood. What kind of plot was this? How could the Empress Dowager let an unmarried princess stay in the home of a minister? Moreover, she was still in her filial piety. Was it to make it easier for Yu and Princess Mingzhu to hook up? On the way from Yunzhou to the capital, the two of them rode on the same horse. Yu was very confident because he treated Princess Mingzhu like a father and daughter. Ning Shu chuckled at this. Men and women should not be so close. They hugged and hugged each other along the way. Princess Mingzhu often looked at this man who was old enough to be her father. This plot made Ning Shu want to vomit. This was the plot of an ode to a mistress. Don't talk about men in ancient times having multiple wives. Yu promised the original Wei Lingxian that he would only have one wife. He said that he would be satisfied with having a wife like Wei Lingxian in this life. He thought that this was a commitment between the two of them. However, one day, Princess Mingzhu appeared. This Princess Mingzhu was a mistress. Princess Mingzhu's arrival caused a huge uproar in the general's mansion. She and Yu could not help but love each other and hurt everyone. Yu thought that the best result was that he did not divorce Wei Lingxian and married Princess Mingzhu. However, it was harmful to both women. Soon, he would be able to see Princess Mingzhu, who was the epitome of beauty. Ning Shu smiled and looked at the dark clouds accumulating in the sky. It seemed that it was going to rain. At this moment, Ning Shu's mood was just like the dark clouds. The sound of horse hooves could be heard not far away. Everyone was shocked. Ning Shu looked over and was shocked. Because he saw that Yu and Princess Mingzhu were riding on the same horse. In broad daylight, it was not a big deal in Yunzhou. However, in the capital, Ning Shu could not figure out why the two of them were so calm. Did the powerful plot erase other things? This was an ancient time with strict rules. All the plot was focused on the general's mansion. Was everything else blurred? Yu and Lingyun did not care about the woman in their father's arms. When the old madam saw this, she glanced at Ning Shu and gave Ning Shu a look of affirmation. She was comforting Ning Shu. Ning Shu felt that the old madam was the most powerful person in the general's mansion. Her husband died young, so her son, Yu, brought glory to the family and made her daughter-in-law be respectful and filial to her. The look in her eyes just now was very touching. He felt that his mother-in-law was on his side. Chapter 382. And you and the others arrived at the gate. And you got off the horse first and then helped Princess Mingzhu off the horse. They did not avoid physical contact. Mother. And you greeted the old lady first. The old lady nodded repeatedly and said, "It's good that you're back." Ning Shu looked at Yu with a smile. Yu was a handsome man with the charm of a mature man. His military uniform gave people a sense of security. Ling Xian. Yu looked gentle and reached out to grab Ning Shu's hand. The smile on Ning Shu's face froze and his hair stood on end. "Thank you for taking care of our family." Yu grabbed Ning Shu's hand. "Father, Mother missed you so much that she got sick. She recovered as soon as you came back," and Ling Yun said coquettishly. Looking at his daughter, Yu thought of Princess Mingzhu again. He explained to everyone, "This is Princess Mingzhu, King Yan's daughter. Next to her is the young heir." Hearing this, everyone hurriedly knelt down to salute. Princess Mingzhu hurriedly said, "You don't have to be so polite. When I see you, I'm very envious and yearning. I want to integrate into this family." Ning Shu was speechless. The old lady's face changed. She had thought that Princess Mingzhu was an ordinary woman in the civil unrest, but she did not expect that she was a princess of the royal family. Moreover, she was riding on the same horse with her son. "Princess Mingzhu will live in the general's mansion for the time being." Yu said to everyone. Then he turned to Princess Mingzhu and said, "You can treat the general's mansion as your home in the future." Seeing that her father treated Princess Mingzhu so well, Ling Yun stamped her feet and said, "Father, you don't love me anymore. You like this princess." Ning Shu scolded Ling Yun, "Don't be rude to the princess." "It's okay." Princess Mingzhu hurriedly said, "I envy you. When I see you, I think of my family in Yunzhou. They are no longer alive." Ling Yun immediately showed a sympathetic expression and said, "It's okay. I'll be your good friend from now on." Princess Mingzhu nodded and smiled. She was very touched. She looked at Yu, who was looking at her with a smile. Ning Shu looked at Princess Mingzhu. She was elegant, poetic, gentle, beautiful, weak, strong, brave, and strong. It was as if he wanted to give her all the good things, but it couldn't cover up what she had done. A group of people courteously welcomed Princess Mingzhu into the general's mansion. Ning Shu saw that Yu had been comforting Princess Mingzhu the entire time. Even Ling Yun and Yu were surrounding her. Ning Shu just watched. Seeing the old lady frowning, he smiled faintly. There were some things that she couldn't bear alone. Yu opened a separate courtyard for Princess Mingzhu and added a lot of good things to the courtyard in order to make Princess Mingzhu feel the warmth of home. Yu found Ning Shu and asked him to draw some money from his account to make the courtyard more comfortable. After all, Princess Mingzhu was a princess of the royal family. Ning Shu almost rolled her eyes. She deeply felt that there was something wrong with Yu's head. He actually brought back an ancestor and made his family unhappy. What a childish act. Why didn't Yu feel that he was duty-bound to help Princess Mingzhu? Since she was a princess of the royal family, she should stay in the imperial palace instead of living in the houses of her officials. Maybe Princess Mingzhu really didn't know these things. In Yunzhou, Prince Yan was the king, and Princess Mingzhu lived like a princess. No one asked her. Her life was simple and beautiful. After such a family accident, Princess Mingzhu still chose to be simple. She was a pure white lotus, so pure that she didn't know anything about the world and didn't know shame. Ning Shu smiled very virtuously and said to Yu, "Now Ling Yun is in charge of the house. If you have anything to say, tell her. I thought that Ling Yun is not young anymore, so I let her manage the house." Yu nodded and turned to find Ling Yun. Then Ling Yun generously gave Princess Mingzhu a large sum of money and even went out to buy things with her. She told Princess Mingzhu not to be polite. Ning Shu just smiled faintly when she knew these things. She was so calm as if she was watching a play. The old lady's face darkened, but she couldn't say anything. Didn't she give the money? What if the reputation of treating a princess of the royal family was ruined? What if the Empress Dowager in the imperial palace was dissatisfied? Not everyone was like Princess Mingzhu, who didn't care about worldly opinions. Her son invited the great Buddha back, but she had to kneel down and worship him with tears in her eyes. It was ironic that a princess of the royal family had to be supported by the general's mansion. Moreover, the emperor and the Empress Dowager didn't give any compensation to the general's mansion. They didn't hold a funeral for Prince Yen, and his coffin wasn't brought back to the capital. These things had been forgotten. Princess Mingzhu didn't even burn any paper for her father and the clansmen of Yunzhou. All of them were full of love. A princess of the royal family cried and wanted to be an old man's concubine. After a busy day, Qin Haodong finally made Princess Mingzhu's small courtyard more presentable. Ning Shu called An Lingyun, who had gone out to play all day, to the front. Looking at his beautiful daughter, who was as beautiful as a butterfly, he felt cold in his heart. "Mother, what can I do for you?" An Lingyun asked Ning Shu. Ning Shu told An Lingyun, "Make a vegetarian meal for dinner. Princess Mingzhu has just lost her family, so she needs to observe mourning for her family. Lingyun, you are a big girl now. There are some things you should know. The ancients valued filial piety, and filial piety was the most important of all virtues. Filial piety was a measure of a person's character. A strict family would even abstain from sexual intercourse. If a child was born during the mourning period, it would even be a stain on the official's record. From this point of view, Princess Mingzhu was actually a heartless person. If she slept with a man during the mourning period, would the Prince of Yen be angry? However, Princess Mingzhu, who was ignorant of worldly affairs, wouldn't know these things. This was a world of romance. These were all trivial things, so there was no need to pay attention to them. If you have nothing to do, ask your grandmother more. Your grandmother is a great woman, Ning Shu said indifferently. An Lingyun nodded and went to arrange it. At dinner time, old Madame Shen looked at the vegetarian dishes on the table. Ning Shu asked, "Today is not the 15th day of the month. Why are we eating vegetarian food?" Old Madame Shen believed in Buddhism. Every 15th day of the month, she would eat vegetarian food for a day. She prayed that An Yu, who often went to war, would be safe. She also prayed for An Yu, whose hands were stained with blood, to atone for his sins. Old Madame Shen felt very uncomfortable that she had broken the old madame's rule so rashly. Ning Shu said, "Mother, Princess Mingzhu is in mourning. It is not suitable for her to eat as much as we do." At this time, Princess Mingzhu walked in with the little heir. When she heard Ning Shu's words, she was very touched and said, "Thank you for thinking about me, madam, but I want to integrate into this big family. You don't have to worry about me." Ning Shu, ha ha ha. Ning Shu clearly saw the matriarch's face darken. Chen Shi looked at the delicate and pitiful, fresh and refined Zhu Mingzhu. Her heart felt very uncomfortable. A person who was in her mourning period was living in someone else's home. Chapter 383. Given Princess Mingzhu's status, it was not appropriate for her to live in the general's house. Not only was there a distinction between the ruler and the minister, but there was also the distinction between men and women. She was also an unmarried daughter. She had prepared vegetarian food for her sake so that she could fulfill her filial piety. How could she say that there was no need to care about her? Old Mrs. Shen's face was trembling, and she was so disgusted that she wanted to die. "Princess, don't you like the food I prepared for you?" An Lingyun felt wronged. She had prepared the food especially for Princess Mingzhu, whose family had already passed away. Princess Mingzhu quickly explained. She was both moved and anxious. "It's not like that. Lingyun, do you know how touched I am? But I want to be like you. I don't want to be special. Gage doesn't want me here. I want to be part of your family. Your family is so warm, with a kind grandmother, a strong father, and a noble and dignified mother. And Lingyun forgave Princess Mingzhu immediately. And Yu, who was beside her, said, "Don't worry. Stay with us. We will take good care of you." And Yu, who was dressed in light blue, walked in and said, "Everyone, you don't have to worry about Princess Mingzhu. Treat her as a family. Don't exclude her. Don't give her any special care. Let her feel the warmth of a family." General. Princess Mingzhu looked at Yu with infatuation. Her eyes were full of affection. But when she saw the dignified and virtuous wife of the general, she began to feel sorry for herself. He already had a wife, a dignified and noble wife. But she still longed for the warmth of his body. She wanted to absorb his warmth. God, please let her feel more of the general's warmth. God, please forgive her greed. Hearing her son's words, the old madam frowned so hard that her eyebrows could be pinched to death. Ning Shu laughed in his heart. And Yu looked old, but he was still a childish man. Without the guidance of his father, there were no more responsibilities on his shoulders. His mother was tolerant, and his wife gave in to him. And Yu was not influenced by the world. In essence, he was the same as Princess Mingzhu. How could he fight a battle with the intention of avoiding his feelings? How could he fight a battle with a calm heart, ignoring the piles of bones of the soldiers behind him? He, who was invincible, had lost the battle. He was ashamed and tortured by his feelings, so he wanted to commit suicide. However, Princess Mingzhu came, so they decided to live. Then she ran back and said that she wanted to be with him. Ning Shu only wanted to ask, "Where is your face? Why is your face so thick?" And Yu was a man who was shameless as an old man, unrighteous as a husband, disrespectful as a father, unfilial as a son, and unwise as a minister. He was a man who looked like a genius on the outside but was rotten on the inside. Usually, it was not obvious, but when something happened, his character would be exposed incisively and vividly. For example, when it came to Princess Mingzhu, he was completely brainless. Ning Shu said, "The princess has a noble status. How can she be the same as us? It's the same. Why would it be different? I want to be friends with everyone. We are all equal," Princess Mingzhu said firmly. Ning Shu was speechless. And Yu looked at Princess Mingzhu with brighter eyes, while Lingyun looked at her with admiration. Ning Shu narrowed his eyes and looked at his children. He had to do something. Everyone sat down, and the atmosphere was rather strange. The old madam, Chen Shi, had a long face, but Yu did not feel it. He smiled as he watched his children chatter with Zhu Mingzhu. Ning Shu saw that Madame Shen's hands were trembling as she held the chopsticks tightly. Obviously, she was trying her best to restrain herself. Ning Shu looked around and saw the little heir sitting next to Princess Mingzhu. The little heir was thin and looked tired. He looked weak when he was eating. He had not said a word since he entered the general's mansion. But Princess Mingzhu did not see it. She only had love in her heart. Love, she told the little heir to rebuild King Yan's mansion every day, but she did not expect that her behavior would completely ruin the little heir's future. She slept with a man during the mourning period and went to the battlefield. She was the princess of the royal family, but she insisted on being the concubine. With a sister like this, the little heir would face all kinds of colored eyes. This shame would be branded on him for the rest of his life. Oh, your great love. Ning Shu ate very little. After the meal, they went back to their own courtyards. Princess Mingzhu looked at Yu in a daze. Seeing her like this, Yu's heart moved as if something had broken. With extreme joy and strong uneasiness, he said in a dry voice, "Princess, have a good rest." Hearing this, Princess Mingzhu felt as if she had received the whole world. She held the little heir's hand and went to her own courtyard. Perhaps Yu had really regarded Princess Mingzhu as his daughter before. But having such a beautiful woman who loved him, compared to the dignified Wei Lingxian, Princess Mingzhu's naivety brought a different excitement to him. Yu followed Ning Shu to Ning Shu's courtyard. Seeing that Yu seemed to want to sleep with him, Ning Shu became a Spartan. Neither Yu nor Ning Shu spoke. For a moment, the atmosphere was a little awkward. Ning Shu said, "My husband must be tired. Rest early." And Yu didn't seem to have the intention to roll around in bed either. He lay down with Ning Shu. Ning Shu breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he did not need to sleep with her. This was someone else's husband, not hers. Although they were husband and wife physically, their souls belonged to her. She was only here to complete the mission. After completing the mission, she would leave this world. She had no right to use this body to do anything against reason. It was like a strange question. If one day, your mother and your girlfriend exchanged souls, you had to have sex to get rid of this state. Would your sex be the mother's body with your girlfriend's soul, or your sex be the mother's soul with your girlfriend's body? It was difficult to choose because both were immoral. Ning Shu turned over with her back facing Yu. She kept thinking about how to complete the mission. Since entering this world, Ning Shu had been in a state of dissociation because she did not have a definite goal to strive for. She did not know what the original owner of this body wanted at all, so she was also in a state of confusion. Ning Shu scratched her head. She calmed herself down and put herself in Wei Lingxian's shoes. If she were Wei Lingxian, she would be a genuine feudal woman. She was born dependent on men. Society had a lot of restrictions on women and required them to be faithful to one man. This kind of thinking was deeply rooted in Wei Lingxian's mind. Then it would be impossible for her to get divorced. Women who were divorced by their husbands would have to bear a lot of pressure in society. Some women even chose to commit suicide because they were too ashamed to live. Therefore, even if Yu hurt her deeply, Yu was still her husband. Chapter 384. Ning Shu cursed in his heart. Why did he accept such a mission? Ning Shu wasn't really a woman from a feudal society. Even if he put himself in her shoes, he would still be biased. Besides, Ning Shu didn't want to give Wei Lingxian an ending that she couldn't accept. Ning Shu was a modern person. Fuck, she could cripple Yu, tear Mary Sue apart, get a divorce, or find a man who truly loved her. But circumstances didn't allow it. Besides, this man could be found easily. Wei Lingxian, who would truly love and get a divorce, wasn't tempted. It wasn't that Wei Lingxian wasn't good, but the circumstances were. Therefore, she had to protect her position as the wife. She couldn't do anything wrong and make public opinion side with her. There was also Wei Lingxian's son and daughter. Ning Shu didn't know what to do with them. These two children were undoubtedly ingrates. They were both on Princess Mingzhu's side and even criticized their own mother for Princess Mingzhu's sake. Ning Shu was also bitterly disappointed in the two children. However, they were Wei Lingxian's flesh and blood. Wei Lingxian had painstakingly raised them with joy. It was instinctive to protect one's children. Even if these two children hurt Wei Lingxian deeply, would Wei Lingxian be willing to see the mission enforcers bully her children? She could scold and hit her own children, but others couldn't touch them. When she was the empress, Ning Shu changed the little kid's fate and made him the emperor. Empress Xiao Xiao even gave her the halo of an empress. Obviously, in the hearts of most women, children were very important. Blood ties couldn't be cut. Fuck, he really wanted to die. What kind of mission was this? 2333, what kind of mission did you accept? Ning Shu was furious. He vented his anger at 2333. How many times have you tricked me, 2333, this kind of mission is random. It has nothing to do with me, 2333 said. I can only try my best to figure out Wei Lingxian's thoughts. Then what do you think Wei Lingxian wants? Ning Shu asked 2333. I'm just a system. How would I understand the thoughts of humans, especially the thoughts of women? Ning Shu, holy shit, Ning Shu was at a loss the whole night. She pulled out a lot of her hair, but in her heart, she was thinking, what's the point of a woman's life? Marry, have children, work hard for a family, and in the end, these men won't take it to heart. So much so that when they met their true love, they would immediately forget about all these years of mutual help. Wasn't it good to live a peaceful life? Why did he have to make so many uncontrollable feelings? Live a peaceful life? Ning Shu suddenly had an idea. Right, Wei Lingxian hated Princess Mingzhu the most. Because of Princess Mingzhu's appearance, everyone in the general's mansion had fallen into hysteria. Their love and hatred had expanded infinitely. A father is not a father, and a son is not a son. Father and son are fighting over a woman. The entire general's mansion was destroyed because of this woman. What Wei Lingxian wanted the most was to return to the days without Princess Mingzhu. Although she worked hard to manage the general's mansion, she still had to worry about Yu, who was away on an expedition. However, Wei Lingxian's heart was calm and peaceful. All a woman wanted was a home, a stable home. Those were the best days of Wei Lingxian's life. Ning Shu let out a long breath. Her erratic heart calmed down. At least she had a goal to strive for. Why aren't you sleeping? Yu's voice rang out beside her. Ning Shu shifted to the side and said, General, I'm worried about Yu. What's Yu worried about? Yu's voice was hoarse from waking up. Ning Shu was speechless. She said, Yu is already 17 years old. He's about to get married and have children, but he doesn't have a job. He doesn't have any fame or fortune. I remember that you were already on the battlefield when you were 17. Yu grunted. That's true. Ning Shu said, so I was wondering if I could find a job for Yu. He likes to practice martial arts. I want him to join the army. Join the army? Are you willing? I don't think mother will agree, Yu said. He's not my child. What's there to be reluctant about? Ning Shu was silent. Yu said he would think about it. At breakfast the next day, Yu told the old madam that Yu should join the army. The old madam didn't agree. Joining the army for 2 or 3 months and not seeing her grandson made the old madam's heart ache. Yu obviously didn't expect her father to suddenly ask her to join the army. Yu looked at the gentle Princess Mingzhu. Princess Mingzhu exclaimed and covered her mouth. She said to Yu, it's so dangerous to join the army. Why do you want Yu to join the army? Ning Shu smiled gracefully and said in an extremely dignified manner, it's a man's duty to protect the country and fulfill his ambitions. Princess, why can't Yu join the army? Princess Mingzhu looked at Ning Shu in astonishment. She said, but Yu is your son. How can you ignore his life and death? Princess Mingzhu frowned tightly. Her face was full of, how can you be so cold-blooded? The old madam didn't look happy. She was dissatisfied with Ning Shu. The old madam was old and not as decisive as she was when she was young. When she was young, she also pushed her son Yu into the battlefield and became the general of Zhenwei today. But Princess Mingzhu's words made her want to kill Yu immediately. Ning Shu looked at Princess Mingzhu. Her casual actions and words would cause a huge dispute and sharp confrontation. Was she really innocent, or did she bring trouble to others with this kind of personality? Ning Shu wanted Yu to leave the general's mansion so that Yu wouldn't be caught in the whirlpool of father and son fighting for a daughter. Ning Shu looked at Yu and asked, Yu, what do you think? Don't you want to be like your father? Yu looked at Princess Mingzhu, but Princess Mingzhu was looking at Yu. Ning Shu looked at Yu. Princess Mingzhu had just arrived at the general's mansion yesterday, but Yu was already like this. Princess Mingzhu was really charming. Her gentle and weak appearance made men want to protect her the most. And Yu said, "I'll think about it." Ning Shu didn't say anything. He really didn't want to care about these two children, especially when he thought about the plot in the novel. It was simply too frustrating. As soon as Princess Mingzhu dropped Jin Daodu, everyone began to criticize her. Princess Mingzhu knew that she was wrong, but she wouldn't change. They were true love, and they didn't do anything wrong. She tried to use an apology to erase all the hurt. In fact, it was really scary to think about it. You couldn't avoid it because she would constantly confess to you, over and over again, and unconsciously stab you in the heart again and again. During breakfast, old Madame Fu's expression was gloomy. Moreover, she displayed it openly for Ning Shu to see. Usually, the old madam wouldn't show such a face to her daughter-in-law, which meant that she was really dissatisfied. Chapter 385. After breakfast, Ning Shu followed the old lady into the room. The old lady sat in a chair and drank tea, ignoring Ning Shu. Ning Shu walked over and poured a cup of tea for the old lady. He said calmly, "Mother is angry that I sent you to the army." The old lady snorted. Ning Shu didn't care about the old lady's angry face. He said carefully, "I'll tell you something from the bottom of my heart. Mother should know what kind of person I am. I've called you mother for more than 20 years. You're like my real mother. I have no choice but to do this." The old lady's face softened a little. She couldn't put down her pride and said, "Why do you have to send you to the army?" Ning Shu pursed his lips and said, "Everyone in the general's mansion is different from Princess Mingzhu. Princess Mingzhu is an unmarried woman. If her reputation is damaged in the general's mansion, the Empress Dowager will blame us. How can the general's mansion bear the responsibility? And you and Princess Mingzhu are about the same age. Especially now that Princess Mingzhu is still in her mourning period, it will be a big scandal. I'm taking precautions." As Ning Shu spoke, he showed a distressed and helpless expression. "And you is my son. How can I not feel distressed? But for the general's mansion and to train in you, I didn't sleep last night. After thinking it over and over again, I can only do this." The old lady frowned. She held the cane in her hand and kept turning it. Obviously, she was thinking about the consequences of this matter. Finally, she hit the cane and said, "Let's do it." The old lady asked you to send you to the army as quickly as possible. Moreover, it was the army of Lizhou, which was some distance away from the capital. The army of Lizhou was the most valiant of all the armies, and they were all veterans. If Yu, a pretty boy, didn't work hard, he would be miserable. And you meant to put Yu in the Agile Cavalry Battalion in the capital. After all, he could take care of Yu. However, Ning Shu was determined to put Yu in Lizhou. How could they meet in the capital all the time? The old lady glanced at Princess Mingzhu and saw that her grandson looked at Princess Mingzhu differently. She immediately nodded, waved her hand, and sent her away. If this drags on, I'm afraid something bad will happen. Ning Shu did this on purpose. He wanted to make Yu suffer and take her mother's care for her as a matter of course. It was like raising a wolf for nothing. Before Yu could confess, she was packed up and sent away. Perhaps she had some vague feelings for Princess Mingzhu, whom she had only met a few times. Even if it's just a hazy feeling, I'm going to grind it out for you. And you wouldn't die. After all, he was the supporting male lead. But even if he didn't die, he would lose a layer of skin. Once Yu left, Ning Shu felt much more relaxed. He looked at the elegant and refined Princess Mingzhu and smiled. Especially when he heard Princess Mingzhu ask Ning Shu, "Why didn't you send Yu off?" Ning Shu's smile became even more dignified. "Junju may not know, but if us womenfolk go, it will make the soldiers of Lizhou look down on Yu. In the future, they will target you even more. Ming Zhu's face was filled with disapproval. Since you know those people have bad intentions, why did you send you over? Ning Shu was speechless. He couldn't communicate with her. After Yu left for a while, Ning Shu found that there was something wrong with Yu. He was often in a daze. He was either distressed or had an irrepressible sweetness. Ning Shu knew that some things were bound to happen eventually. This was the plot and couldn't be resisted. What Ning Shu had to do was to minimize the damage. In order to prevent the general's mansion from falling apart, Ning Shu chose to protect the two children and give up Yu. Lingyun and Princess Mingzhu became good friends. Lingyun had the power to manage the mansion and often spent some money to buy things with Princess Mingzhu. Princess Mingzhu lived in Yunzhou and lived a very rich life. She had a good taste and bought expensive and rare things. Lingyun also spent a lot of money. When the old lady occasionally checked the account book, she was shocked and hurriedly asked Ning Shu to go over. Ning Shu looked at the account book and then looked at the uneasy Lingyun. Princess Mingzhu was standing next to Lingyun delicately. Lingyun, where did the money go? You are a member of the Guan family and the livelihood of the entire general's mansion is in your hands. If you use the money, the entire general's mansion may have no food to eat, Ning Shu said to Lingyun in a calm tone. Lingyun twisted her handkerchief with her fingers and lowered her head, unable to say a word for a long time. What happened? Yu walked in and asked. As soon as Yu came in, Princess Mingzhu's eyes were fixed on him. Yu met her eyes and immediately looked away. Princess Mingzhu looked sad. Yu's heart ached, but he forced himself to endure it. Ning Shu told Yu what happened. Yu frowned and didn't say anything. Ning Shu said again, Lingyun, there should be a record of every expenditure. What did you buy with the money? You are not young anymore. You can't be so capricious. Seeing that her good friend was being scolded, Countess Mingzhu suddenly knelt down, which shocked everyone in the room. Ning Shu reacted first and knelt down. The old lady hesitated for a moment and also knelt down. Seeing that his mother knelt down, Yu also knelt down. Lingyun was at a loss and didn't know what had happened. Seeing everyone in the room kneel down, she knelt down as well. Please forgive us. You are a princess. How can you kneel in front of us? We don't deserve it. Ning Shu said, if the Empress Dowager knows that you have been wronged in the general's mansion will be blamed. Please forgive us. Princess Mingzhu's heart ached when she saw Yu kneeling in front of her. Was this the distance between her and the god? She didn't care about being a princess at all. Even if she wanted to stay with the god like a cat or a dog, she wanted to be with him. However, he had a graceful wife, a pair of children, and the warmth she yearned for in the general's mansion. Mingzhu's words were stuck in her throat. Finally, she said, Madam, please don't blame Lingyun. She went out with me. If it's because of money, I'm willing to take out my money. Please don't blame Lingyun. Damn it. It's not a matter of money. I educated my daughter. It's none of your business. With Ning Shu's bad temper, he would have whipped her long ago. However, in this task, she had to keep calm to avoid falling into the crazy and depressing situation of the host. Hearing that Mingzhu pleaded for her, Lingyun was grateful. Yu looked at Princess Mingzhu and felt that she was the kindest and purest woman he had ever met. However, there were too many things between them. Once they took a step forward, everything would be destroyed. Chapter 386. The matter of money was left unsettled. Yu personally said that it was not a big deal and that it was not a big deal to buy something for Princess Mingzhu. When Ning Shu heard this, he sneered in his heart. Damn, the entire general's mansion owed Princess Mingzhu. If she said no now, would there be a rumor tomorrow that the general's mansion mistreated the orphan? Damn, it was simply infuriating. However, he still had to keep a smile on his face. The aura of calmness flowed into his heart, making Ning Shu feel like he was in a world of ice and fire. The old madam was so angry that her whole body was trembling, but Yu, as her son, did not notice. Ning Shu originally wanted to work with the old madam to destroy Princess Mingzhu and protect the general's mansion before this matter was exposed. Going against Princess Mingzhu was actually going against the entire royal family, so he had to be careful with his strategy. However, the little heir suddenly fell ill and fainted in the school. This time, Princess Mingzhu went crazy. The little heir was the future of King Yan's mansion, so she cried for the imperial physician to save her brother. Ning Shu looked at Princess Mingzhu, who was crying her heart out as if the sky was falling down. Ning Shu rolled her eyes. She usually did not care about her younger brother, but she rushed all the way from Yunzhou to the capital. As soon as she reached the capital, she let the little heir enter the royal school. Usually, she only knew to tell the little heir that she wanted to revitalize King Yan's mansion. On Mingzhu's birthday, the little heir did not go to school and went to buy a gift for his sister. He was actually beaten by Mingzhu. After explaining, Mingzhu hugged the little heir and cried as she apologized. The little heir was traumatized. The imperial physician diagnosed that the little heir had caught a cold, which was contagious. In ancient times, colds were fatal. Seeing Mingzhu's desperate and sad look, Yu insisted on staying to take care of the little heir despite the old madam's objection. Looking at Yu's proactive attitude, she guessed that even her own mother did not receive such treatment when she was sick. Therefore, Yu stayed in Mingzhu's courtyard all day long. The two of them were originally affectionate. After the little heir fell ill, the two of them almost broke through the window paper between them. However, their actions were filled with the sweetness of lovers. Ning Shu felt that she needed to have a good talk with her daughter. Last time, it was because of the money. After dinner, Ning Shu took Lingyun for a walk. Ning Shu looked at Lingyun's pretty face. The original owner really did spoil his children. Instead, he let them grow up to be so ignorant. Coupled with the influence of the main character aura, they basically didn't have the ability to think. Ning Shu had seen many brainless people kneeling under the halo. However, Ning Shu didn't know how to communicate with Lingyun. Teaching her a lesson would only cause her to have a rebellious mentality. If he was gentle, she wouldn't learn from her mistakes. She wouldn't know pain until the stick hit her. Lingyun and Ning Shu strolled like this. When they passed by the fake mountain, they heard a sound coming from the shadows. Ning Shu stopped and asked Lingyun to keep quiet. It seemed to be Yu's voice. There are many things that we can ignore, but there are many things that we can't ignore. To me, you're too beautiful, too good, too young, and too noble. You're a princess of the imperial family, and I'm already 40 years old. I have a wife and children. I can't give you a perfect love. Since I can't give you that, I still let myself go and provoke you. I deserve to die. Princess Mingzhu was in great pain. You've returned to your original world. All the responsibilities, family ties, status, are surrounding you. Don't worry, I still have this little bit of pride. I won't pester you. What are you talking about? Yu's handsome face was filled with pain. He grabbed her wrist and shook her. If you can't truly understand my heart, I'm not thinking about myself now. I'm thinking about you. Your future, it's more important than my own matters. I love someone, but it doesn't mean that I have the right to destroy them. Princess Mingzhu's eyes shone brightly. Princess Mingzhu cried and laughed at the same time. Her voice trembled. I'm satisfied to hear you say that you love me. You said the word love. You said your true heart. That's enough. And you, I love you too. I'll always remember the first time we met. You rode a horse and rushed over like a god descending from the sky to save me. From that day on, in my heart, you became my master, my god, my faith, my love, and my heart's connection. I can't help it. I'm just like that. So, if you want me to keep a distance from you, fine. If you want me to control my gaze, fine. If you want me to talk to you as little as possible, there's only one thing that you can't control, and you can't control me. That's my heart. Princess Mingzhu looked at Yu with infatuation. The tears in her eyes had turned into two clusters of flames. There was a kind of power burning fiercely toward Yu. With a resolute expression, she said, "I'll never take back the love I've given you, and I'll never repent. Even if it's just a game to you, it's an eternity to me." And Yu looked at Princess Mingzhu. His pupils were trembling. He was too shocked. After she said such a thing, he couldn't say anything else. Compared with her indomitable spirit, how shabby had he become? And Yu felt ashamed of his inferiority in front of her. Amidst the feeling of inferiority, there was also the most intense, most painful, most heartbreaking love. He had never experienced this kind of love in his life. And Yu gazed at Princess Mingzhu. Under the moonlight, her face was glowing like a pearl. There was deep affection and despair on her face. And Yu couldn't speak or think. He was completely immersed in an unprecedented shock. He had such sincere, pure, and passionate love. He was terrified, but he was also glad. Ningxu was speechless. "Master, master, my God, my faith, what the hell was this?" After hearing Princess Mingzhu's words, Ningxu's teeth were so sore that he couldn't even feel them. She was honest and shameless. Ningxu's worldview was completely refreshed. They. And Lingyun pointed at the two people over there. Ningxu looked over and saw that Yu and Mingzhu were already hugging and kissing each other. Ningxu pulled Lingyun, who was in a daze, away and pulled her into his room. Lingyun was so angry that her face turned ashen. How could Mingzhu do this? How could she snatch father away? I've always treated her as my sister-in-law in my heart. Ningxu's face darkened. Lingyun immediately shut her mouth, but her expression was still full of anger. She was angry that Mingzhu had lied to her. Ningxu looked at the indignant Lingyun. At this time, Lingyun didn't speak up for her. She didn't even speak up for her mother. How could she save such a child? She was most afraid of meeting such a simple-minded and brainless person who would hurt her deeply. Ningxu felt very tired. Chapter 387. Ningxu didn't expect them to express their feelings so quickly. How long had it been? Princess Mingzhu had only been in the general's mansion for a little more than a month. This made the two of them burn with passion. They could no longer suppress the feelings in their hearts. And Yuming was aware of his responsibilities, identity, and status, but he still did not hesitate. He no longer suppressed his surging emotions and threw himself into this passionate love like a moth darting into a flame. Princess Mingzhu was even more so. Her God, her master, and her master responded to her feelings, which was enough to make her wild with joy. Ningxu was a bystander. He couldn't see how desperate the love between them was. He only felt disgusted. He couldn't understand why such a love was respected and supported by everyone in the end. Logic was fed to the dogs. Lingyun was angry that Princess Mingzhu lied to her. She took a detour when she saw Princess Mingzhu. Especially when Lingyun saw Princess Mingzhu's bright red face and her incomparably beautiful appearance, she was so angry that she could not vent her anger. When Princess Mingzhu saw her good friend treat her like this, she was still happy that her feelings were reciprocated. Her heart gradually cooled down. She wanted everyone's blessings, especially Lingyun, who was Yu's daughter. Mingzhu wept as she stopped Lingyun and asked, "Lingyun, why are you treating me like this? Did I do something wrong? If I did something wrong, please tell me. You ignoring me like this makes me feel very uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. I don't want to lose a friend like you, I beg you. And Lingyun waved her hand away and said coldly, Princess, I treated you as a friend, but I didn't expect you to like my father. Princess Mingzhu was shocked and depressed when she heard An Lingyun say what she had tried so hard to hide. She shook her head and said painfully, Lingyun, I didn't want to lie to you, but I really couldn't help it. I fell in love with your father without knowing where it came from. I couldn't suppress my feelings. Even if there was a cliff in front of me, I would jump down without hesitation. An Lingyun was shocked. You, but, my mother. An Lingyun struggled. That was her father, her mother's husband. Princess Mingzhu grabbed Lingyun's hand and said humbly, Lingyun, I have never thought of destroying your family. I just want to stay by your father's side and watch him from afar. I just want to watch him from afar. An Lingyun was speechless. She looked at Princess Mingzhu's beautiful face and the tears on her eyelashes. She looked very pitiful. An Lingyun's heart softened. I really lose to you. Princess Mingzhu laughed and cried at the same time. She grabbed An Lingyun's hand and said, Lingyun, thank you for forgiving me. Thank you. I'm just shocked by you. An Lingyun shook her head, looking like she couldn't do anything about it. Ning Shu, who was standing in the corridor not far away, clutched his chest and almost spat out a mouthful of blood. She wanted to be your little mother. How could you forgive her so easily? The veins on Ning Shu's forehead bulged when he saw the two of them holding hands again. How could Princess Mingzhu be so shameless as to say such things? She looked so pure and innocent. She snatched someone else's husband and did it without hesitation. Didn't An Lingyun have the ability to distinguish between right and wrong? He felt so stifled. Ning Shu hammered his chest. He had lived long enough to see things like this. Madam? Zhu looked at Ning Shu worriedly. Madam, are you all right? I'm fine. Go and find old madam. Ning Shu coughed and went to find old madam. Ning Shu wanted to protect the general's residence, not destroy it. The general's residence was already a small boat in a storm. She couldn't sink the boat just to take revenge on some people. The general's residence was where Wei Lingxian could settle down. Therefore, he had to find an ally. And old madam was an ally. Old madam had lost her father and supported the entire family on her own. She had also found a virtuous wife like Wei Lingxian for An Yu so that An Yu could focus on his career. Old madam was the best at manipulating people. All these years, she had never argued with Wei Lingxian. Wei Lingxian was filial and virtuous, and she had never interfered in the matters between An Yu and Wei Lingxian. Even if An Yu didn't have a concubine in his backyard, old madam didn't mind. This made Wei Lingxian feel even more respect for her mother-in-law. Ning Shu walked into old madam's courtyard and heard her personal maid say that she was taking a nap. Ning Shu didn't say anything and waited outside for her to wake up. The maid brought a stool for Ning Shu, and Ning Shu sat down with a faint smile. Ning Shu waited for almost 2 hours before there was movement in the room. It was obvious that old madam had just woken up. After a while, the maid called Ning Shu in. Ning Shu reached out to straighten his clothes before walking in. Old madam was drinking tea when she saw Ning Shu's red eyes. She was stunned for a moment before she asked, "What's wrong?" "Mother, I have something to say to you in private," Ning Shu said. Old madam had all the maids in the room leave before Ning Shu said, "Go ahead. There's nothing that can't be said between us." Ning Shu told old madam everything he saw last night. When old madam heard this, her hand that was holding the teacup trembled, and the tea spilled out. Ning Shu stepped forward, took the teacup from old madam's hand, and placed it on the table. Old madam looked very tired. Why doesn't An Yu know his place? What will you and Princess Mingzhu do if he does this? Old madam's expression was uncertain. You can't do this. Ning Shu was not surprised at old madam's attitude. A widowed woman raising her eldest son must have gone through unimaginable hardships. Old Madam had a lot to do with the fact that Old Madam could make the general's mansion what it was today. It was impossible for a princess of the royal family to be a concubine of a general. This was a challenge to the authority of the royal family. If a Yu divorced his wife and remarried, he would definitely be blamed for Qin Shimi. Besides, Wei Lingxian didn't do anything excessive. She didn't violate the rule of 7 divorces. She even gave birth to 2 children and took good care of the general's mansion. Old Madam was famous for being virtuous. If she divorced Wei Lingxian, what would people think of the general's mansion? Old Madam was a woman who had lost her husband, so she cared a lot about her reputation. Princess Mingzhu was also an ignorant person. If she could bear the responsibility of being the first wife of the general's mansion, she would be born to be a concubine. That was why Old Madam was so against Mingzhu and An Yu in the plot. However, Old Madam was more rational, while the original owner fell into endless pain and depression, which made her behavior a little crazy. The room was silent for a moment. Ning Shu and Old Madam didn't speak. The atmosphere was so heavy that it made people hold their breaths. Old Madam closed her eyes. When she opened them, she looked at Ning Shu and asked, "What do you think we should do about this?" Chapter 388. The old lady asked for Ning Shu's opinion. If this matter was not handled well, it would be a disaster for the general's mansion. The old lady couldn't suppress her anger and disappointment, but she held it back. She pulled the beads in her hand quickly. Her son had done such an irresponsible thing at his age. The old lady had a shadow in her heart when she saw the 2 of them riding on the same horse. If An Yu was unmarried and a royal princess married his son, it would be good for his son's future. But now Princess Mingzhu might bring disaster to the general's mansion. The old lady tried her best to steady her breath. Ning Shu asked, "Lingxian, what do you think?" "I'm in a mess. I'm afraid that something will happen to the general's mansion. If Princess Mingzhu was not a royal princess, I would marry her for An Yu. But Princess Mingzhu is the descendant of King Yen. She is still in mourning. I'm afraid that the Empress Dowager will blame the general's mansion." Ning Shu looked depressed and sad. "I sent An Yu away before, but I didn't expect An Yu to be like this." "I didn't expect An Yu to, mother, what do you think?" Ning Shu kicked the ball to the old lady again. "I have no idea now. The general's mansion, An Yu, Princess Mingzhu, and Lingyun, who is Princess Mingzhu's friend." The old lady pulled the beads faster and faster. Finally, the beads scattered and the round beads rolled on the ground. The old lady suddenly opened her eyes. "You go to the palace with me." Ning Shu thought so. Even if Princess Mingzhu wanted to go to the battlefield, she couldn't run out of the general's mansion. Ning Shu went back to his yard and put on the 3rd-rank noble lady's robe. When he came out, the old lady had already put on the robe and got on the carriage. Ning Shu handed the token to the palace and helped the old lady to the Empress Dowager's palace. After paying respects to the Empress Dowager asked about Princess Mingzhu. The old lady said respectfully, "Princess Mingzhu is very good. I'm afraid that I didn't take good care of her and neglected her." The Empress Dowager said with a smile, "Mingzhu is not a picky child. Please take care of her." The old lady's face darkened for a moment. Ning Shu watched from the side. He wondered how this absurd and illogical thing could happen. Why should the general's mansion support Princess Mingzhu? The matriarch hesitated for a moment before saying, "Empress Dowager, this subject's wife is afraid because this subject's grandson, An Yu, is planning to get married. Furthermore, Princess Mingzhu is still in mourning. This subject's wife is somewhat afraid that this happy occasion will offend Yan Wangying's spirit." When the Empress Dowager heard this, she was in a trance for a moment. She seemed to have just remembered that Princess Mingzhu was still in mourning. Ning Shu was too tired to complain. In this world, other than love, everything else could be ignored. The old lady said a few more words to the Empress Dowager. Seeing that the Empress Dowager was already tired, she tactfully excused herself. From the beginning to the end, Ning Shu didn't say anything. He just accompanied the old lady. Coming out of the palace, the old lady's figure was a little hunched. Ning Shu felt that this old lady was quite strong. And Yu was an unfilial son. Like father, like son. Wei Lingxian's child was also like this. He resented his own mother for a woman. The old lady went to rest as soon as she returned to the manor. Ning Shu was wondering when the Empress Dowager would call Princess Mingzhu back to the palace. Ever since Yu and Mingzhu revealed their relationship, Yu rarely came to Ning Shu's courtyard at night. Yu was afraid that Princess Mingzhu would be angry. After receiving such a warm and sincere feeling, Yu realized that he only respected his wife and didn't love her. She slept in the study every night, saying that she was reading military books. Ning Shu pretended that he didn't know anything. It was better for her to sleep alone. Not long after, the Empress Dowager sent someone to the general's mansion. She said that the King of Yen was about to reach the 7th day of his life. The emperor had asked an eminent monk to perform a ritual. As the King of Yan's descendants, Princess Mingzhu and the Crown Prince should go to the palace. Yu and Mingzhu heard the news. At night, Yu sneaked into Mingzhu's courtyard. Seeing Mingzhu crying alone, he was heartbroken. He hugged Mingzhu from behind. Mingzhu was shocked and struggled. "Mingzhu, it's me," Yu said in a low voice. Mingzhu immediately stopped struggling and just cried. Yu turned Mingzhu's body. Seeing Mingzhu's tears falling like rain, his heart ached even more. He couldn't help kissing Mingzhu's eyes. "Don't cry. Do you know that seeing you cry makes me feel so useless? I want to kill myself." "No." Mingzhu covered Yu's mouth. "I won't allow you to say that. I'm going to the palace tomorrow. And you, I don't want to leave you. I don't want to go to the palace. I feel like I'm going to die if I leave the general's mansion and you." Yu said, "It's okay. You'll come back." Mingzhu hugged Yu. "I'm happy, but I'm also in pain. Yu, I'll work hard to make everyone recognize us." "Mingzhu, you're so nice." The next day, Ning Shu looked at Yu and Princess Mingzhu. The two of them were like White Snake who was going to be locked in Leifeng Pagoda. Princess Mingzhu cried in front of the nanny sent by the Empress Dowager. She went to the palace to kowtow to the dead King of Yen. Why did her father perform a ritual as if she was going to die? The nanny didn't know what to say. Yu looked like he was enduring the pain. Ning Shu thought he was constipated. Although the two of them were in pain, the carriage still left. Yu couldn't help but take a few steps as if he wanted to chase after the carriage. Princess Mingzhu lifted the curtain in the carriage. When she saw Yu standing at the gate of the general's mansion, she burst into tears. The old lady's face was dark all the time. Ning Shu was watching the show. He was not moved. He only felt inexplicable and disgusted. Since Princess Mingzhu entered the palace, Yu had become very dispirited. He sighed sorrowfully and was often in a daze. He was lovesick that only Princess Mingzhu could cure. Moreover, he had lost weight. Ning Shu thought it was too exaggerated. One day apart felt like 3 years. The religious rite lasted for 7 days, and it was time for Princess Mingzhu to come back. Yu had been waiting at the entrance of the general's mansion since early in the morning. He had cleaned himself up and looked handsome, completely different from the decadent look he had shown a few days ago. However, Yu didn't see Princess Mingzhu at the gate of the general's mansion until it was dark. He didn't eat or drink for the whole day. Ning Shu thought, so affectionate, so touched. Damn. The old lady asked Ning Shu to invite Yu into the mansion for dinner. Ning Shu went to invite Yu, but An Yu ignored Ning Shu and looked in the direction of the palace. Ning Shu said, "You can eat or not." Without Princess Mingzhu in the general's mansion, Ning Shu could eat and sleep well. However, in front of the old lady, Ning Shu pretended to be very worried about An Yu. It seemed that he couldn't eat and only ate the dishes. Chapter 389. The sky gradually darkened, but An Yu had been waiting at the gate of the general's mansion. Seeing her father like this, An Lingyun immediately felt distressed. At the same time, she was also moved by the sincere relationship between her father and Princess Mingzhu. Ning Shu saw the expression on An Lingyun's face and was moved and shocked. Ning Shu's hands were itching to slap her face. What position did she place her mother in? An Lingyun ran to the gate and said to her father, "Father, go in and eat something first." An Lingyun waved her hand and didn't say anything. An Lingyun lifted her skirt and ran into the general's mansion. She said to Ning Shu, "Mother, go and persuade father. Father's body won't be able to take it if he continues like this." Ning Shu was speechless. At this moment, Ning Shu didn't know what to do at all. Fuck, even if An Yu died, it had nothing to do with her. It was better for him to die quickly, die quickly. An Lingyun saw Ning Shu's cold face and didn't say anything. Finally, she sighed. Ning Shu sneered in his heart. "Soon, you won't have the mood to care about these sad things. And you kept waiting like this." The old lady stood at the gate with her walking stick and looked at An Yu. She sighed and kept muttering, "Evil creature, evil creature." In the end, it was Princess Mingzhu who bribed a little eunuch in the palace. The little eunuch found the general's mansion and said to An Yu, who was guarding the gate, "General Zhenwei, Princess Mingzhu was left in the palace by the Empress Dowager. She can't leave the palace until the princess is out of service. Princess Mingzhu asked you to find a way to save her. And you had been hungry for a day and hadn't eaten anything." When he heard this, his body shook twice. He grabbed the little eunuch's body and shook it. He roared, "How could this be? How could this be?" The little eunuch was shocked by An Yu's shaking. He quickly said, "I don't know. I don't know anything." An Yu's eyes rolled back and he fainted. Ning Shu exclaimed and hurriedly ran over. He kicked An Yu without leaving a trace, but An Yu didn't have any reaction. It seemed that he had fainted. Old Madame Fu's face was full of anxiety and worry. She also expected better from An Yu. An Yu was almost 30 years old, but he was like a young boy, risking his life for a woman. An Yu, who had fainted, was brought in. He fed him some water and called for the doctor. The doctor said that he was too angry and weak. In any case, Ning Shu just kept feeding An Yu water. Father is so pitiful. An Lingyun clenched her fists. He can't meet Princess Mingzhu. Father, you have to wake up. Princess Mingzhu is still waiting for you to save her, An Lingyun said to the unconscious An Yu. Ning Shu was speechless. How could there be such an unscrupulous person? Fuck. Was the Empress Dowager in the Imperial Palace going to kill Princess Mingzhu or something? She actually wanted to save her in the Imperial Palace. These words were really disgraceful. How did this child grow up? How did the original owner teach his child? Old Madame Fu stroked her chest as if she was about to have a heart attack. Ning Shu hurriedly asked the maid to help old Madame Fu to rest. Old Madame Fu didn't force him. She said that if An Yu woke up, she would send someone to inform her. Ning Shu nodded. Ning Shu said coldly to An Lingyun, "You also go to rest. I'll look after your father." Seeing Ning Shu like this, An Lingyun said with some indignation, "Mother, why do you think the Empress Dowager doesn't let Princess Mingzhu return to the general's mansion?" Ning Shu wanted to roll his eyes. He wondered if An Lingyun was living in a feudal society where the emperor's orders were greater than heaven. Did the Empress Dowager need to explain to you what she wanted to do? Princess Mingzhu is a princess of the royal family. What's wrong with her living in the imperial palace? For example, you are a member of the general's mansion. If you live in the general's mansion, why don't you live in the minister's mansion? Ning Shu said coldly. But. And Lingyun said again, but Princess Mingzhu has already treated the general's mansion as her own home. If you treat the minister's mansion as your home, then the minister's mansion is your home? Ning Shu's tone became colder. She was simply a muddle-headed person. And Lingyun felt very uncomfortable after being scolded by Ning Shu. Mother, don't you like Princess Mingzhu? She's so beautiful. Ning Shu said. Go and rest. I'll wait for your father to wake up. Get lost. I want to hit someone now. And Lingyun could only leave. Ning Shu pulled open An Yu's clothes, revealing a strong and scarred body. He turned An Yu over and stabbed a silver needle into his back. An Yu, who was unconscious, groaned and sweated profusely. Ning Shu pulled out the silver needle and waited by the bed for An Yu to wake up. An Yu slept all night and only woke up the next morning. When he woke up, his face was sallow. He ignored Ning Shu, who had been watching over him all night, and lifted the quilt to go into the imperial palace to see Princess Mingzhu. However, after taking 2 steps, he collapsed on the ground. An Yu had not eaten for a day and a night. He was so hungry that he had no strength. The old lady came in with her walking stick. When she saw An Yu, she raised her walking stick and wanted to hit him. However, when she saw the haggard An Yu, she held her walking stick in the air for a long time. An Yu, what are you doing? You're so muddle-headed that you can't see things clearly. It's impossible between you and Princess Mingzhu, the old lady said sternly with her walking stick. An Yu said, I'm muddle-headed. I don't want to see things clearly. After meeting Mingzhu, I feel that my life is not in vain. My life can be colorful, even if it's short. Colorful fireworks, right? They deserve to die in the end. Ning Shu looked at the old lady with a hurt, painful, and constipated expression. Mother. The old lady forced An Yu to drink some porridge. An Yu, who was drinking a bowl of porridge, looked at Ning Shu. He walked over and grabbed Ning Shu's wrist. He used so much strength that Ning Shu's wrist hurt. It's you. It must be you. An Yu roared at Ning Shu. Ning Shu's face trembled. He felt that his face was splashed with saliva by An Yu. Damn it, it's so disgusting. He really wanted to kick An Yu's crotch. Ning Shu said in a trembling voice, Husband, I don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean by it? The old lady held her walking stick and shouted, An Yu, let go of Lingxian first. We can talk about it. Ning Shu struggled to get rid of An Yu's control and hid behind the old lady. It must be you. As soon as you entered the palace, the Empress Dowager summoned Princess Mingzhu. It's you. It must be you. An Yu pointed at Ning Shu, his face full of pain and hatred. If you have anything to do with me, come at me. Why do you have to deal with Princess Mingzhu? Have you thought about how painful it must be for her to be alone in the palace? Wei Lingxian, I was wrong about you. Princess Mingzhu is just a lonely woman. Can't you tolerate her? Where did your elegance and dignity go? Ning Shu was speechless. I want to kill my husband. Chapter 390. An Yu's roar and accusations not only made Ning Shu want to kill him, but even the matriarch was dumbfounded. She said in a daze, An Yu, Lingxian is your wife. How can you say that about her? Moreover, we entered the palace together. She didn't say anything in front of the Empress Dowager. Mother, I'm your son. Why are you protecting this evil woman? If it wasn't for her, Princess Mingzhu wouldn't have entered the palace. An Yu had completely lost his mind. He wanted to vent the anger in his heart, but the pain made him unable to see anything clearly. He only wanted Mingzhu. Ning Shu looked at Yu's red eyes. He looked as if he had gone crazy. He lowered his head and didn't say anything. You went to the palace because you wanted to stop me and Mingzhu, right? Yu said angrily. The old madam shook her head. I went to the palace with Ling Xian to ask the Empress Dowager to bestow a marriage to Yu. Once there's a suitable candidate, the Empress Dowager will bestow an honorable marriage. Yu was stunned. He pursed his lips tightly, stood up, and rushed out of the room. I don't care. I'm going to the palace to find Mingzhu. I won't allow it, the old madam said sternly. Yu was in pain and helplessness. He knelt on the ground and kowtowed to the old madam. Mother, I beg you. I can't live without Mingzhu. Without Mingzhu, I feel that there's no joy in my life. Ning Shu rolled his eyes. Then you lived in pain for the first half of your life. You and Wei Lingxian helped each other in difficult times, but it was fake. Damn it. Seeing Yu's infatuated look, Ning Shu was so embarrassed that her cancer of embarrassment flared up. You. The old madam was so angry that she was about to have a seizure. You're planning to abandon the general's mansion, your wife, and your son, and barge into the palace. What kind of place is the palace? You can go anywhere you want. Princess Mingzhu is a princess of the imperial family and lives a luxurious life in the palace. You're a man with a family. Can Princess Mingzhu be your concubine? Yu felt basin after basin of ice water being poured on his body, causing his body to tremble uncontrollably. In the end, he was still her son. The old lady was angry and distressed. She said, Yu, forget about Mingzhu. She has a noble status. In the future, her husband will definitely be a dragon or phoenix among men. Don't tell me you want to ruin her and the general's residence. Thinking that Mingzhu was going to marry someone else, Yu howled in pain, like a trapped beast. Seeing his mother like this, Ning Shu said, Mother, Yu's emotions are unstable now. Let him rest more. Old Madame Fu closed her eyes and locked the door to prevent Yu, who was emotionally unstable, from going out. The old lady's face had more wrinkles. She looked at Ning Shu and sighed. Ling Xian, it's been hard on you. Ning Shu shook his head and said, I just want to protect the general's mansion and the two children. You're sensible. Yu hasn't suffered any setbacks since he was young, and his battles have been smooth sailing. I originally thought that Yu would be safe and sound, but I didn't expect such a thing to happen at this age. What kind of goo did Princess Mingzhu cast on Yu to make him so obsessed? The old lady was almost gnashing her teeth, and her tone was filled with hatred. Ning Shu's face was filled with worry, but her heart was cold. Yu was locked up, and his meals were sent in by Ning Shu. When Yu saw Ning Shu, his eyes were very cold. In front of Ning Shu, he threw all the food on the ground, and the plates shattered. Ning Shu's expression was indifferent. He didn't let anyone clean up and locked the door. He didn't care about Yu anymore. Old Madame Fu was in low spirits. When she heard Ning Shu say that Yu still didn't eat, she gritted her teeth and said, It's fine if he doesn't eat. He only knows how to eat when he's hungry. Ning Shu just curled the corner of his mouth and didn't say anything. But what Ning Shu didn't expect was that Lingyun actually opened the door secretly and let Yu out. Yu went straight in the direction of the imperial palace after he went out. When Ning Shu came to deliver the food, he saw Lingyun in the room. His expression changed. He grabbed Lingyun's collar and dragged her directly to the ancestral hall. He kicked her leg and directly made Lingyun kneel on the ground. Mother! Lingyun shouted in pain. She felt that her knees were broken. She looked at Ning Shu in disbelief. How can you do this to me? Ning Shu said coldly, Repent in front of the ancestors properly. The entire general's mansion will be gone because of you. Lingyun didn't understand. Seeing Ning Shu's cold expression, she was very scared. She wanted to say something, but she saw her mother quickly walk out and lock the ancestral hall. If you don't understand, keep kneeling. Ning Shu went directly to the stable. He took a horse and jumped on its back, heading for the imperial palace. And Yu was crazy for love. What kind of place was the imperial palace? He could break in whenever he wanted. And Yu had lost his mind. There was only Mingzhu in his mind. Mingzhu, what kind of power could make someone so crazy and stupid? Was it really love? If it was, then love was really a terrible thing. Now Yu was simply inhumane. When Ning Shu arrived at the entrance of the imperial palace, he saw Yu arguing with the guards and shouting for Princess Mingzhu. Let me in. I want to see Princess Mingzhu. General, you can't enter the imperial palace without the waist token and His Majesty's imperial edict. If you want to break in, we can only take you down as an assassin. I'm just going to the imperial palace to see Princess Mingzhu and the little heir. I'll see if they're doing well. I'll come out soon, Yu said patiently. When Ning Shu heard Yu's words, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The imperial palace was Yu's home. He could enter whenever he wanted. He kept talking about Princess Mingzhu. Did Yu really care about Princess Mingzhu's reputation? Did Yu really love Mingzhu? He didn't care about her reputation. Ning Shu hurriedly got off the horse and dragged Yu over. When Yu saw Ning Shu, he immediately said, "What are you doing here? Are you also here to stop me? I'm telling you, I won't go back until I see Mingzhu." Yu wanted to shake off Ning Shu's hand, but he felt that Ning Shu was too strong. He couldn't shake him off at all. I don't care if you want to die, but I can't let you drag the general's mansion down with you. Ning Shu had never seen a person go crazy. It was as if he had been bitten by a mad dog and got rabies. He swelled again. He saw once again that great love needed to be so hysterical. The love that Ning Shu had seen was either hurting each other, trampling on others without principles, or ignoring everything hysterically. Damn it, love was a matter between two people. Why did so many people have to be involved in a love war? Damn it. Without saying anything, Ning Shu knocked Yu out with a karate chop and put Yu on the horse. Then he took out a money bag and gave it to the guards. He said, "I'm sorry, everyone. General is drunk." The guards weighed the money in their hands and generously said that this didn't happen. Chapter 391. Ning Shu rode his own horse and led Yu's horse. The unconscious Yu was lying on the horse's back. Ning Shu flicked the whip in his hand and whipped Yu's body. It was too damn annoying. How could there be such a person? Yu, who was whipped by Ning Shu, groaned and did not wake up. When they returned to the general's mansion, the old madam was waiting anxiously. When she saw the unconscious Yu, her expression turned ugly. Ning Shu explained, "Granny, Yu wanted to barge into the palace, so I had someone knock him out." Ning Shu did not want to tell the old madam that he was the one who did it. The old madam sighed and had someone bring Yu back to the room. She said to Ning Shu, "Ling Xian, you did the right thing. Now the general's mansion can only rely on you and me." The old madam grabbed Ning Shu's hand and patted it. "Yu is lucky to have a wife like you." Was it a blessing? However, Yu did not know how lucky he was. It was ironic. It was supposed to be the man who protected the family, sheltered the family from the wind and rain, was filial, and raised the children. However, the woman had to support the entire family. A muddle-headed man was really scary. She could be so calm because she did not love anyone who did not have any fluctuations in his heart. People who fell into a whirlpool of emotions were irrational. Ning Shu said to the old madam, "The general's mansion will be fine." The old madam had been working too hard recently. She did not look energetic, but Yu could not see it. Ning Shu walked into the room and saw An Yu lying on the bed with tears in the corners of his eyes. Ning Shu sneered and unbuttoned An Yu's clothes. He turned over and took a silver needle to the side of An Yu's waist. An Yu groaned in pain and sweat poured out of his body. Ning Shu pulled out the silver needles with an indifferent face, helped An Yu put on his clothes, and then locked the door. During dinner, there were only Ning Shu and the old lady at the table. The old lady sighed and said, "Let Ling Yun out." Ning Shu put down his bowl and chopsticks and said respectfully to the old lady, "Mother, Ling Yun is not young anymore and is still ignorant. If she marries into her husband's family like this, I'm afraid it's not a marriage but a feud. Didn't she think about what kind of disaster it would bring to the general's residence if she let her father out today?" The old lady sighed, waved her hand, and said tiredly, "Whatever you say." Ning Shu saw that the old lady didn't want to eat. She didn't even touch her chopsticks. Ning Shu scooped a bowl of soup and handed it to the old lady. He said, "Mother, drink some soup. It's not good for your health if you don't eat anything." Ning Shu really didn't want anything to happen to the old lady. The old lady was an old lady from a feudal society. There were some things that Ning Shu still needed the old lady to remind him. Although this body was the general's wife, it was nothing in front of the royal family. The old lady drank half a bowl of soup and didn't drink anymore. She returned to her room to rest. Ning Shu went to the ancestral hall to see An Ling Yun. He opened the door with a creak. In the dim ancestral hall, An Ling Yun was no longer kneeling on the ground. Instead, she was sitting on a praying mat. When she saw Ning Shu enter, she hurriedly said to Ning Shu, "Mother, you're here to let me out." Ning Shu closed the ancestral hall door. He looked at An Ling Yun and asked, "Do you know your mistake?" "Mother." An Ling Yun wanted to pull Ning Shu's sleeve coquettishly, but Ning Shu avoided her and only looked at An Ling Yun coldly. An Ling Yun looked at her mother's face flickering under the flickering candlelight. Her mother's eyes were so cold that it was frightening. An Ling Yun felt wronged. "Mother, you don't love Ling Yun anymore." Ning Shu took a deep breath and said indifferently, "I asked you if you know your mistake." I know my mistake." An Ling Yun immediately said, "Mother, can you let me out?" Ning Shu pointed at the rows of ancestral tablets. His voice was like thunder. "Tell me in front of the ancestors where you were wrong." An Ling Yun was frightened by Ning Shu's terrifying appearance. She immediately started crying. "Mother, don't be like this. Ling Yun is scared." Ning Shu only looked at her. An Ling Yun cried as she looked at Ning Shu. She saw her mother's gaze was as cold as a knife. When she looked at her, it was like a sharp blade piercing towards her. It was also like an ancient well that reflected the moon. It was treacherous and terrifying. An Ling Yun was scared in her heart. She cried even louder. "Mother, I know my mistake. I really was wrong. I shouldn't have let father out." "What else?" Ning Shu asked. "What else?" An Ling Yun looked at Ning Shu. She was a little confused. Ning Shu's heart was burning with anger. He was about to explode. After doing so many missions, Ning Shu had never felt so helpless and angry. Treating innocence as cuteness. Naivety was really killing people. Ning Shu was glad that he had sent An Yu away in advance. Otherwise, he couldn't imagine what kind of chaotic scene it would be. This kind of love and hate entanglement really burned his brain. Ning Shu reached out and touched the tears on An Ling Yun's face. An Ling Yun's tears turned into a smile. "Mother." Ning Shu smiled and said, "Kneel properly. Don't be lazy. In this ancestral hall, the ancestors' spirits are watching you. When you think it through, they will let you out." "Mother." The smile on An Ling Yun's face froze. She looked at Ning Shu in disbelief. Ning Shu turned and walked out of the ancestral hall. An Ling Yun in the room reacted. She banged on the door and shouted, "Mother, let me out. Mother, I'm so scared." Ning Shu stood outside the door. Hearing Ling Yun's heart-wrenching voice, a complicated feeling welled up in his heart. There was heartache, hatred, and an indescribable melancholy. These were clearly the emotions of the original owner. "Mother, mother, how can you do this to me? I hate you. I hate you. You weren't like this before, mother." Ling Yun banged on the door and cried. She didn't want to stay in the ancestral hall. She kept feeling that there were pairs of invisible eyes looking at her. "Mother, mother, Ling Yun hates you. Mother, I was wrong. Let me out." Ning Shu stood at the door and said, "In the past, mother spoiled you too much, causing you to be unable to distinguish right from wrong. From today onwards, I won't spoil you anymore." When Ling Yun heard Ning Shu's voice outside the house, she cried even louder. It was especially unbearable for a person who doted on her to suddenly treat her badly. Ling Yun was very angry now. She even resented her mother. She said without thinking, "Mother, you're just angry because I let father out and he went to look for Princess Mingzhu. That's why you're angry and vent your anger on me." "Ning Shu, yes, I'm venting my anger on you. Who told you to be my daughter? I gave birth to you and raised you. What's wrong with venting my anger on you? Because what you owe me, I don't owe you." Ning Shu said indifferently. "Mother, you." Ling Yun was stunned. "Kneel properly. The ancestors are watching you." Ning Shu said indifferently. Chapter 392. Ning Shu asked Zhu to bring him a praying mat. He knelt in front of the ancestral hall and said to Ling Yun, "Kneel properly. You're not the only one who did something wrong. I also did something wrong." Ling Yun saw her mother kneeling on the ground through the crack in the door and didn't know what to say. She just shouted, "Mother, kneel," Ning Shu said coldly. With Ning Shu outside, Ling Yun's heart calmed down. She knelt on the praying mat and looked around. She felt that the ancestral hall was gloomy. Zhu put a cloak on Ning Shu. Ning Shu closed his eyes and circulated his qi to extinguish the burning anger in his heart. She had to stay calm. Otherwise, she would be no different from the original owner. If she, an outsider, was so angry and irritable, then Wei Lingxian, who was in this situation, was like being roasted in a fire. All kinds of emotions could drive a person crazy. She always felt that there was some kind of power that made people crazy and desperate. If the heavens wanted to destroy people, they first had to make them crazy. "Mother, are you there?" Ling Yun heard that it was quiet outside and couldn't help but ask. Ning Shu made a sound of acknowledgement. Ling Yun's heart calmed down immediately. Ling Yun asked Ning Shu, "Mother, what did you do wrong?" Ning Shu said coldly, "I doted on you too much. You didn't know right from wrong and didn't know the ways of the world. Based on your own preferences, you arbitrarily decided right and wrong. You even brought harm to the entire general's residence. You're ashamed to face the ancestors of the Yin family." Ling Yun bit her lip and didn't say anything. She felt wronged and scared. Her mother, who loved her, shouldn't be like this. Ning Shu moved his knees and closed his eyes, reciting the incantation for a peerless martial art in his heart. Ning Shu felt that he needed to exchange for a secret manual that could calm one's heart, such as the heart-cleansing incantation. Ling Yun called out from time to time to check if Ning Shu was outside. As long as Ning Shu responded, Ling Yun's heart would be incomparably calm. "Mother, do you hate Princess Mingzhu?" Ling Yun asked. Ning Shu faintly said, "Ling Yun, there are some things that you have to see with your own eyes. Put yourself in mother's shoes and treat yourself as mother. What do you think?" Ning Shu continued, "You don't have to stand on your mother's side. Let's talk about you. In the future, when you get married, your husband will fall in love with a woman of noble status. You will face the possibility of being abandoned. Not only that, the child you raised will have to call someone else mother. The husband you love doesn't love you, the child you love doesn't love you. You will grow old and have no one to rely on. You will die a miserable death. After you die, no one will burn any paper offerings for you, while your beloved husband will be in love with someone else. Will you like the woman who stole your husband and your child? Ning Shu's voice was very calm and indifferent. However, thunderclaps exploded in Lingyun's heart, making her body tremble and mournful. She said with a crying voice, "Mother, Ning Shu sighed and said, "Lingyun, this matter is far from simple. Think about it carefully. I hope that the general's mansion will be safe. I hope that you and your brother will be safe." This was the wish of the original owner of this body. She wanted to minimize the damage in this disaster as much as possible. As for Wei Lingxian wanting to return to the days without Princess Mingzhu, it was impossible. What happened was what happened. Wei Lingxian cared about these two children. Ning Shu had tried his best to make these two children understand things. Damn, it was really difficult for her, who had never given birth to children, to educate them. "Mother, Princess Mingzhu said that she didn't want to steal father from you. She said that she could stay by father's side regardless of the status. She said." And Lingyun couldn't continue in the end. Ning Shu didn't get angry. He said to Lingyun, "What else? What kind of person do you think Princess Mingzhu is?" "Princess Mingzhu is an approachable person. She is elegant and refined. Moreover, she is overflowing with talent. She can even compose poems," Lingyun said. Ning Shu said, "No matter how approachable Commandery Princess Mingzhu is, she is still a Commandery Princess of the royal family. She has a noble status and is not equal to us. She can ignore it, but if she does, it will be disgraceful." That night, Ning Shu and Lingyun talked for a while. Ning Shu knelt at the door for the whole night. When he got up, his legs were numb. When he opened the door of the ancestral hall, he saw Lingyun lying on the ground. Touching her head, he felt that she had a fever. Ning Shu unhurriedly asked Zhu to bring the feverish Lingyun into the room. To put it bluntly, Ning Shu would rather Lingyun be sick like this than see her jump up and down all day. After giving Lingyun cold medicine, old madam came over and saw that her granddaughter was sick again. She sighed and blamed Ning Shu for keeping Lingyun in the ancestral hall all night and making her sick. Ning Shu didn't say anything. Old madam kept muttering things like "evil creature" and so on. While Lingyun was still sick, Yu woke up and wanted to go out. Ning Shu directly ordered people to seal up the windows to prevent Yu from running away. Old madam closed her eyes and didn't say anything to Ning Shu's actions. There were tears in the corners of her eyes. Ning Shu entered the room and looked at Yu. He said, "Yu, before you calm down, you should stay in this room." Yu looked indifferently at Ning Shu. "Do you think you can trap me like this?" Ning Shu said indifferently, "I know I can't trap you. I just want you to think clearly. You carry the lives of everyone in the general's residence on your shoulders. Are you sure you want so many people's lives to fulfill your love with Princess Mingzhu? Your Majesty, if the Empress Dowager blames you, Mother won't be able to bear it at her age. There's also your son and Yu's future and Lingyun's future happiness. Have you considered her life for the rest of her life? If you don't care about anything, who will Lingyun marry if her reputation is ruined?" He clearly had so many responsibilities on his shoulders. Why was Yu still so willful and stubbornly wanted to be a moth to a flame? In the end, he was selfish. Sometimes, people didn't just live for themselves. Yu painfully covered his head and growled. His expression was contorted. Ning Shu didn't pay attention to him and directly locked the door. Lingyun's fever was very serious. Lying on the bed, she began to talk nonsense. Ning Shu rubbed her body and gave her cold medicine. It was faster than drinking Chinese medicine. Ning Shu was still calm and unhurried. This made the matriarch's anxious heart calm down a little. She felt that her daughter-in-law was strong. In the face of such a situation, she still wanted to take care of the general's residence. Holding Ning Shu's hand, she sighed and said, "Ling Xian, don't worry. I will always be on your side. If you weren't here, my old bones wouldn't be able to hold on." Because these people had nothing to do with her, she wasn't anxious at all. She didn't feel any heartache. Naturally, she was incomparably calm. Now, Yu was no longer hysterical. When Ning Shu brought food into the room, he ate and rarely lost his temper. It seemed that he had restrained all his emotions. He was often in a daze and sometimes clenched his fists. Clearly, he was struggling fiercely in his heart. On one side was his family. On the other side was the only woman he loved in his life. It was as if a knife had cut his heart in half. Chapter 393. Princess Mingzhu was waiting for her god to save her in the palace. In the square palace, Princess Mingzhu felt suffocated. Everyone here was indifferent and did not have the warmth of the general's mansion. Princess Mingzhu missed Yu very much. The Empress Dowager asked her to pray in the temple and did not allow her to go out. The Empress Dowager did not allow her to go back to the general's mansion, which made Princess Mingzhu very miserable. Every time a palace maid came to the temple to deliver food, Princess Mingzhu kowtowed and begged the little palace maid. "Please, can you let me go out to find Yu? I'll give you money. Can you let me go out? I want to find my brother. Where is he? Without me by his side, my brother will be very sad." Seeing a princess kneeling and kowtowing to them, the little palace maids were so scared that their faces turned pale. They also knelt and kowtowed, asking the princess not to make things difficult for them. But after a long time, these palace maids were used to Princess Mingzhu's kneeling and kowtowing. There was even disdain in their eyes. She was still a commandery princess, yet she was kowtowing to servants like them. She kept talking about Generalin, and kept talking about men. She was simply shameless. Her brother was staying in the palace, but she acted as if she had done something to him. It was as if the palace was a horrible place. The Empress Dowager asked Princess Mingzhu to pray for her deceased parents and clansmen in the temple. But Princess Mingzhu cried all day and covered her heart with her hands, which made the Empress Dowager very annoyed. The Empress Dowager did not have much contact with Princess Mingzhu before. After a short contact from Yunzhou to Jingcheng, Princess Mingzhu was sent to the general's mansion. Therefore, every time Princess Mingzhu saw the Empress Dowager, she would kneel on the ground and kowtow to the Empress Dowager. She was not afraid of pain, and then she would say with tears in her eyes, "Empress Dowager, you are so kind, noble and kind. You must have experienced such unforgettable love." Then she would cry and bitterly ask her to go out and find Generalin. The Empress Dowager almost had a heart attack because of Mingzhu, especially when Mingzhu would pull on her skirt every time she spoke and look up at her with a humble look. It was as if Princess Mingzhu would cry if she spoke harshly. The Empress Dowager was so angry that her lungs were about to explode. She locked Princess Mingzhu in the Buddha Hall. Then, she heard Princess Mingzhu calling for Yu. The Empress Dowager felt that the general's mansion had evil intentions. Ning Shu and the old lady were summoned into the palace by the Empress Dowager. As soon as they paid their respects, they heard the Empress Dowager's roar. She scolded and condemned Ning Shu and the old lady. The old lady and Ning Shu were prostrated on the ground. The old lady's body was trembling. Ning Shu could see that the old lady's forehead was covered in sweat. Ning Shu pursed his lips and didn't say anything. He prostrated on the ground and listened to the Empress Dowager's words. Yu deliberately seduced Princess Mingzhu in order to climb up the nobility. There was more cold sweat on the old lady's forehead, and the clothes on her back were wet with cold sweat. After the Empress Dowager finished speaking, Ning Shu said, "Your Highness, please forgive me. Since Princess Mingzhu came to the general's mansion, I have regarded her as my daughter. My husband treats Princess Mingzhu with respect. Maybe it's because Princess Mingzhu just lost her family, and it was Yu who saved her, so she relies on Yu a little. However, she definitely doesn't have such bold thoughts." The Empress Dowager was also very angry because of Princess Mingzhu's crying. Now that she had vented her anger, she saw the old lady kneeling on the ground and kowtowing. She looked very pitiful. Besides, Yu fought for the country, so she couldn't disappoint the officials. She said, "I hope so. When Princess Mingzhu is out of service, I will arrange a marriage for her. Thank you for your forgiveness, Your Highness." Ning Shu kowtowed. The Empress Dowager rubbed her forehead and waved to Ning Shu and the old lady. Ning Shu helped the old lady out of the imperial palace. When the old lady got into the carriage, she staggered twice. Fortunately, Ning Shu supported her, or she would have fallen out of the carriage. After returning to the general's mansion, the old lady rested first. Then she fell ill. It seemed that the old lady would not be able to get up. Only then did Yu remember his mother. He knelt in front of the old lady and cried and confessed. The old lady said bluntly, "The Empress Dowager won't agree to your marriage. When Princess Mingzhu is out of service, the Empress Dowager will arrange a marriage. The Empress Dowager already thinks that you have seduced Princess Mingzhu, and the whole general's mansion will be punished. No, Princess Mingzhu and I are really in love. Is she going to marry someone else?" Yu's eyes were a little blank. The old lady's face was livid, and her illness became more serious. "I won't agree to your marriage even if I die, unless I die." Yu's expression was incomparably painful. His eyes were red, and he gasped for breath. Finally, he asked, "Mingzhu, is Mingzhu doing well?" "Of course she's doing well. She's supposed to be a princess who lives in luxury," the old lady said while holding her breath. Ning Shu stood at the side like an outsider. He looked at his husband's painful and helpless appearance because of another woman. "Oh my, seeing you in pain makes my heart feel good." Yu knelt in front of the old lady and said, "I will give up on Princess Mingzhu." The old lady's expression relaxed. She seemed much more relaxed and fell into a deep sleep. Ning Shu and Yu left the room. Yu, who was walking in front, stopped and turned to look at Ning Shu. He said, "Are you satisfied?" Concubine Ning almost laughed. She said in a dignified manner, "Husband, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not dissatisfied. I'm just asking for a stable life. I'm asking for the stability of the general's estate. I'm asking for the safety of my children and a place to settle down." Yu coldly snorted and didn't say anything. He turned and left. From then on, he never entered Ning Shu's courtyard again. Ning Shu went to see the sick Lingyun. Lingyun was still in a daze. When she saw Ning Shu, she called out, "Mother." Ning Shu only told her to rest well. The next day, Yu proposed that he was going to go to war. The old lady sighed and didn't say anything. She agreed. On the other hand, Ning Shu rolled her eyes. If Yu chose to fight at this time, it was obvious that he was trying to avoid emotional matters. If he didn't have a stable mood to fight, and the battlefield was constantly changing, how could such an irrational Yu be qualified to fight? This was irresponsible to the soldiers and the country. Ning Shu had been to war before and knew the influence of a general on the battlefield. It was no wonder that Yu was defeated in the end. Yu told his family, and the next day, he quickly left the camp. Ning Shu went to see Yu off. He saw Yu's eyes. He was riding on a horse. He was extraordinarily handsome. It was no wonder that Princess Mingzhu kept calling him a god and a ruler. Yu was indeed charming when he acted like this. Chapter 394. After Anu's departure, the general's mansion quieted down. The fiery atmosphere also gradually cooled down. It was as if she had returned to her previous tranquility. After experiencing hysterical madness, she was suddenly at peace. Ning Shu finally understood what the original owner, Wei Lingxian, longed for. It was this kind of tranquility. Princess Mingzhu's appearance was like a typhoon, destroying everything around her. After An Lingyun recovered from her illness, Ning Shu allowed her to take care of the entire general's residence. An Lingyun's temperament was obviously much more dull. Sometimes, no one knew what she was thinking about. She didn't look as lively as before. Some things could be felt with personal pain. Ning Shu only used an example to change An Lingyun's attitude. She didn't mention Princess Mingzhu for a while. Although the old madam had recovered, she was not in good spirits. However, Ning Shu didn't think it was over. He didn't know if the elopement in the plot would happen again. After all, Princess Mingzhu was now in the heavily guarded palace. When Princess Mingzhu heard that Anu went to the battlefield, she was completely stunned. Why? Why did Anu go to the battlefield? Why didn't he come to save her? Princess Mingzhu was very sad. She knelt on the futon and cried pitifully. The palace maid next to her ignored Princess Mingzhu and looked at her with disdain. Princess Mingzhu was very determined as she cried. She made up her mind. She would go to the battlefield to find Anu. She couldn't bear to be separated like this. Even if she had to die, she would die by Anu's side. Ning Shu, who was in the general's mansion, heard that Princess Mingzhu secretly ran out of the palace. She bribed a eunuch and disguised herself as a young eunuch. Ning Shu didn't know how to complain about this. How could it be so easy to sneak out of the palace? Everything was for the sake of the plot. Anything that didn't conform to logic could be ignored. Princess Mingzhu also left a letter saying that she was going to find Anu and ask the Empress Dowager for forgiveness. When the old lady heard about this, she almost fainted. It was simply ridiculous. She had already asked her son to give up Princess Mingzhu, but this woman was like a leech sucking on her son. Before the Empress Dowager made trouble, Ning Shu took the lead to enter the palace. In front of the Empress Dowager, he said that he was willing to step down from the court to help Anu and Princess Mingzhu. Ning Shu also explained that she did not expect Princess Mingzhu to do that. Originally, the Empress Dowager was still angry because Princess Mingzhu had slipped away from her eyes and traveled thousands of miles to find a general. There was no dispute between them. Did she think that she was blind? Moreover, she had already said that she would arrange a marriage for Princess Mingzhu when she came out of the costume. Now, Princess Mingzhu had run away with a man. It was a slap in the Empress Dowager's face. Originally, when she saw Ning Shu, she was very angry. But when he came and asked to leave, the Empress Dowager was really stunned. This was undoubtedly a good idea. Princess Mingzhu had run away with a man and had lost her reputation. But of course, it was impossible to let a princess of the royal family be a concubine. Undoubtedly, General Zhenwei's wife asking to leave was a perfect way to solve the problem. The Empress Dowager shook her head and said, "You are General N's first wife. How can you leave just like that?" Ning Shu nodded. He was not surprised by this result, because the Empress Dowager did not dare to do so. If this precedent was set, how could the Empress Dowager face the imperial court's appointed wives? Moreover, if General N's first wife left, it would seem that the royal family forced her to leave. Moreover, Wei Lingxian was a woman who did nothing wrong. In this case, Princess Mingzhu was not in the right. When Ning Shu returned to the general's mansion, he breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, the general's mansion would not be endangered. This was completely Princess Mingzhu's personal behavior. The news of Anu's defeat spread to the capital. The old lady fainted completely. The general's mansion began to be inexplicably chaotic again, which made people restless and desperate. The atmosphere was suffocating. Moreover, Anlingyun was also in trouble. Because she and Princess Mingzhu had spent a lot of money, now there was basically no money in the account book. She could not even maintain the basic operation of the general's mansion. The things that Princess Mingzhu liked were exquisite and expensive. Anlingyun and Princess Mingzhu did not have the concept of money. When they saw something they liked, they bought it. They spent money like running water. The old lady wanted to use her private money to pay for the general's mansion, but Ning Shu did not let her. He directly reduced the number of servants in the general's mansion. Ning Shu asked Anlingyun to choose which servants to let leave the general's mansion. All the servants knelt in front of Anlingyun and begged her not to sell them. Anlingyun had never experienced such a thing. Every servant cried miserably and knelt in front of her. They were very pitiful. Anlingyun looked at Ning Shu and said hesitantly, "Mother, are we really going to sell them?" Ning Shu said faintly, "Yes, because the general's mansion is not enough to support them now. Your father's salary is not much, and the profits from the shop are only enough to cover the expenses of the general's mansion. You have been in charge for so long, haven't you noticed this?" Anlingyun said, "Many of these things were bought for Princess Mingzhu." "I know, but you were the one who paid at that time." Ning Shu said, "Choose who you want. These servants can't serve in the general's mansion, but they can go to other mansions to serve the new master." Anlingyun struggled. Anlingyun had never experienced such a thing. Anlingyun was so scared that she cried. She looked at Ning Shu for help, but Ning Shu just shook his head at her. Anlingyun finally chose a few servants and sold them to the trafficker. Anlingyun took the money that the trafficker gave her. It was just a small 2 pieces of silver. The servants who were sold immediately looked at Anlingyun with resentment. If it wasn't for their status, they would have cursed at Anlingyun. Anlingyun didn't expect that the servants who were usually so respectful to her and called her second miss would look at her so fiercely. It was as if they wanted to eat her. Anlingyun was so scared that she took a step back. Ning Shu pushed her behind him and let the trafficker take the servants away. "Mother," Anlingyun said to Ning Shu, feeling wronged. Ning Shu said, "Don't be afraid. After this, the general's mansion will have to increase our income and reduce our expenses. Lingyun, you have to learn how to do these things." "I know." Anlingyun was depressed. She was not in a good mood. After that, Ning Shu, the old madam, and Anlingyun discussed how to increase their income and reduce their expenses. The old madam cancelled the daily bird's nest. Ning Shu also cancelled the bi-daily bird's nest. This way, they could save a lot of money. Anlingyun bit her lips and said, "There are a lot of things in Princess Mingzhu's courtyard. Should we sell the things in her courtyard?" Ning Shu smiled and looked at Anlingyun. At this time, Anlingyun started to learn how to plan. "No need. Princess Mingzhu will come back in the future," Ning Shu said with certainty. The old madam's face turned pale. Chapter 395. On the other side, Princess Mingzhu rushed to the battlefield with great difficulty. Just as Yu was about to kill himself with his sword, Princess Mingzhu screamed and ran over to hug Yu, who was covered in blood. Yu did not recognize the travel-worn and dirty woman at first, but when he heard Mingzhu's voice, his body stiffened and trembled. He said in disbelief, "Mingzhu. It's me, it's me." Mingzhu's tears fell like rain as she hugged Yu. They looked at each other as if they had seen through thousands of mountains and rivers. Their hearts were overflowing with emotions as they hugged each other tightly. Yu said, "I wanted to die, but after seeing you, I suddenly don't want to die." "Don't die, don't die." Mingzhu leaned into Yu's arms and cried. Then they decided to drag out an ignoble existence. After that, they began to communicate with their souls. Yu and Mingzhu returned to the capital. They knew that there would be huge waves ahead of them, but they were fearless. Anyu and Mingzhu rode on the same horse. Mingzhu turned her head and smiled at Anyu. The emperor was furious about Anyu and Princess Mingzhu. He abolished Princess Mingzhu's title of Princess Yu Dai and demoted her to a commoner. Anyu was demoted from a rank 1 general of Zhenwei to a rank 3 commandant. Anyu was already very happy to pay such a price to get Princess Mingzhu. He could pay any price to be with the person he loved. Princess Mingzhu accepted the imperial edict calmly. In her heart, if she had to choose between Anyu and a princess, she would choose Anyu. Now that she was no longer restricted by her status as a princess, she could enter the general's mansion and live with Anyu. Princess Mingzhu hugged her younger brother, the little heir. No, to be exact, Mingzhu was now a commoner, not the little heir's sister. Princess Mingzhu cried and told the little heir to work hard to revitalize the King Yan's mansion. Then she went to the general's mansion with Anyu without looking back. The whole family waited for them at the entrance of the general's mansion. Ning Shu had a smile on his face. And Ling Yun stomped her feet. How can she be so shameless? Aren't you shocked by her courage to die for you? Ning Shu raised his eyebrows and looked at An Ling Yun. She's eloping, shameless. An Ling Yun spat. During this period of time, she had experienced many things and understood many things. The old lady sighed. When she saw the two people riding on the same horse, her face immediately darkened. Ling Xian, no matter what, I will always be on your side, the old lady said to Ning Shu. Ning Shu didn't comment. He just didn't know what would happen under the halo of the female lead. However, when Ning Shu saw Anyu's sallow face, he couldn't help but smile. Moreover, looking at the intimacy between the two of them, it should be a physical intimacy. The two of them dismounted, and Mingzhu was the first to kneel in front of the matriarch, giving the matriarch a fright. She took 2 steps back with an ashen face and did not say anything. Old madam, I love your son more than myself. I want to integrate into the general's mansion. Old madam, I will be filial to you. I will love you as much as I love Anyu. I will respect and honor you. Please accept me, old madam. I will definitely move you with my sincerity. Get up. The matriarch's face was trembling. Mingzhu then said to Ning Shu, Madam, I really love Anyu. Please help us. Forgive me for not being able to control myself. I won't monopolize Anyu. Just treat me like a cat or a dog. If she was really a cat or a dog, she would have been beaten to death. Ning Shu reached out and slapped Mingzhu's face. Then, with a pained expression, she said, I'm sorry. I couldn't help myself. Can you forgive me for not being able to control myself? Mingzhu covered her face and looked at Ning Shu with tears streaming down her face. She shook her head. Madam, I'm fine. She was so good at enduring. Looking at her, she looked like she was being bullied. Anyu's expression immediately turned ugly. He shouted at Ning Shu, What are you doing? How can you hit her? Ning Shu said, I couldn't control myself just now. You. Anyu frowned. Why are you bullying Mingzhu like this? Anyu, I'm fine. Please don't blame madam. Alright, let's go in. The matriarch interrupted the argument. She glanced at the weak Mingzhu and felt extremely annoyed. During the meal, the matriarch saw Mingzhu and sat down. She coughed and said, I don't know if Princess Mingzhu is used to eating these things. Mingzhu quickly said, Mother, I like these things very much. You don't have to call me mother. It's unreasonable. Although you are a princess, you have already been demoted to a commoner. Moreover, you are a concubine. Call me madam. The matriarch said indifferently. Her words clearly made Mingzhu unable to back down. Feeling wronged, and you could not help but say, Mother, it's better to treat Mingzhu like before. It's fine. Mingzhu smiled at Anyu, causing the matriarch's face to darken again. Ning Shu sneered. In the past, Ming Zhu had the status of a princess. Her status was noble. But now, Ming Zhu was just a concubine who had been stripped of her status. There was something wrong with Yin Yu's head. How could he allow his mother to worship his concubine? Ming Zhu could clearly feel this family's rejection of her. The matriarch did not like her. The matriarch did not like her. Even her good friend, Lingyun, looked at her with disgust. The sudden change in status made Ming Zhu feel very uncomfortable. However, seeing Yin Yu, Ming Zhu's heart was filled with courage. She could rely on her sincerity to make these people accept her again. After dinner, Yin Yu and Ming Zhu went to Ming Zhu's courtyard. Ming Zhu saw Ning Shu and Lingyun standing together not far away. They were looking at her. She said to Yin Yu uneasily, "Go to Madame's courtyard. You haven't seen each other in a long time." Yin Yu grabbed Ming Zhu's hand. "Can you bear to push me to another woman?" Ming Zhu muttered, "You are the person I love. Of course I can't bear to. Don't worry. I will be loyal to you. I will be loyal to our relationship." As soon as Yin Yu entered the room, he impatiently kissed Ming Zhu's lips. Ming Zhu let out a rippling sound. "You really don't need to go to Madame's place." Ming Zhu's consciousness was hazy as she asked happily. "No need. The one I love is you." And you said, "I can't betray our relationship." He clearly meant that he had already dumped that old hag. Yet, he still said it so nicely. And you was very excited on Ming Zhu's young body. He huffed and puffed for a while. Not long after, he vented his excitement. He laid on Ming Zhu's body and panted. Ming Zhu had just started to feel something when Yin Yu finished. Ming Zhu felt as if she had fallen into the air. It was very uncomfortable. However, seeing how tired Yin Yu was, she was too embarrassed to let him do it again. Especially when she saw that Yin Yu had actually fallen asleep. Ming Zhu was a bit unhappy. However, the excitement of being by Yin Yu's side suppressed her unhappiness. Chapter 396. The next morning, it was supposed to be time for Ming Zhu to serve tea to the elders in the family and Ning Shu, the first wife. However, Yin Yu and Ming Zhu slept until late in the morning, leaving the old madam and Ning Shu in the main hall for so long. Ning Shu didn't care about this. The old madam held her walking stick with an ugly expression. In the end, she comforted Ning Shu and said, "Since she doesn't want to serve tea, then forget it. Only when you, the first wife, drink her tea will it be considered as acknowledging her identity. She doesn't even care about it, so don't bother about her." Ning Shu nodded. And Lingyun was already hungry from waiting. She couldn't help but ask Ning Shu, "Mother, why don't I get someone to call father?" Ning Shu looked at the old madam, and the old madam asked her personal maid to call for someone. After a while, Yin Yu and Ming Zhu arrived. When Ming Zhu entered the room and saw everyone looking at her, her face immediately turned red. She looked extremely beautiful. When Ning Shu saw Yin Yu's slightly yellow face, he smiled meaningfully. "Mother, I'm sorry for making everyone wait. You haven't eaten yet, right? Let's eat." Yin Yu was the groom last night, so he looked radiant. Even so, Ning Shu could still see that his face was slightly yellow. "Father, do you know that everyone has been waiting for you for a long time?" And Lingyun pouted and complained to Yin Yu. Yin Yu doted on his daughter, so he didn't say anything when he heard this. However, Ming Zhu knelt down in front of Lingyun and said, "Lingyun, this is all because of me. I was a little tired in the morning, so I slept a little longer. I'm sorry." And Lingyun's expression instantly turned ugly. She said, "Get up. Don't kneel. I was wrong. I made everyone wait for me. I apologize to everyone. Can you forgive me?" Ming Zhu looked at Lingyun as if she was waiting for her forgiveness. Otherwise, she wouldn't get up. And Lingyun was speechless. Lingyun, you are so kind. Please forgive me, Mingzhu said again. And Lingyun was furious. She was the one who came late. If she didn't forgive him, would she be unkind? Ningxu laughed unkindly in his heart. There were some things that could only be felt when it happened to oneself. Mingzhu in the plot was like this. She treated her knees as if they were made of iron. She would kneel down at the slightest provocation and shed 2 drops of cat urine. Everyone stood on her side and blamed the original owner. Now that it happened to An Lingyun, how did An Lingyun feel? It probably wouldn't be too pleasant. Although Mingzhu was pure, she could feel the hatred and malice others had towards her. In this room, An Lingyun was the first to speak. Mingzhu could feel that An Lingyun did not like her, so she did it out of instinct. Out of instinct, he wanted to use the strength of the people around him to help him get out of this predicament. Therefore, An Lingyun was now being targeted. Ningxu didn't say anything and just watched from the side. Lingyun, please forgive me. Mingzhu said to An Lingyun, who had an ugly expression. And you pulled up the kneeling girl and said to An Lingyun, this was my idea. You don't have to blame Mingzhu. Mingzhu is also your mother. Show her some respect. Mother? My mother is Wei Lingxian. Damn, when did a concubine become my mother? An Lingyun was furious. Seeing her father protect Mingzhu, she felt even more sad and jealous. Lingyun and I are friends. You don't have to call me mother. Mingzhu hurriedly waved her hand. An Lingyun was even angrier. Damn, her good friend stole her father. Anyway, An Lingyun felt disgusted but couldn't vomit. She felt extremely uncomfortable. Lingyun, it's getting late. Serve the dishes. Everyone is hungry, Ningxu said to An Lingyun. An Lingyun pouted and ordered the servants to serve the dishes. This was Mingzhu's first meal in the general's residence as a concubine. According to the rules, she should serve a table of people. A concubine was basically a servant. However, Mingzhu sat beside An Yu and picked up food for him. She looked extremely sweet. Mingzhu didn't realize that her identity was different. She was no longer Princess Mingzhu. Furthermore, she was a concubine. The legal wife even had the right to sell her. She lived in her own world and didn't know or care about anything. The old madam's face was dark the whole time. The sound of the ivory chopsticks poking the bowl was very loud. And you noticed that his mother didn't seem to be in a good mood. He asked, Mother, are these not to your taste? The old madam, haha, after breakfast, and you and Mingzhu left. The old madam slammed the ivory chopsticks on the table. She looked extremely angry and her voice was trembling. What kind of upbringing is this? I've never seen such an improper person. Ningxu only comforted the old madam and told her not to be angry. Now, and you naturally treated Mingzhu like a pearl. It was easy to fall in love. Only when they continued to love each other was true love. Ningxu took An Lingyun to various gatherings of noble ladies to let An Lingyun see the world. At the same time, he also took An Lingyun to see her in-laws. Many noble ladies looked at Ningxu with sympathetic eyes. In the past, and you didn't even have a concubine. Now that a shameless Princess Mingzhu had appeared, they all warned Ningxu to set up the rules. Mingzhu was just a commoner now. What was there to be afraid of? Ningxu always smiled and said that he understood. The other madams looked at Ningxu with even more sympathy. Her husband had been snatched away by a woman, but she still had to force a smile. They all talked about how they punished the restless concubine. Almost all of them were gnashing their teeth. As long as it was the legal wife, she hated the concubines who shared her husband. An Lingyun listened at the side and felt that the door to a new world had opened. What was it about being sold? What was it about completely sterilizing the concubine? What was it about being able to torture the concubine and making her serve tea? On the way back, Lingyun asked Ning Shu, "Does everyone hate concubines?" Lingyun's living environment was simple and happy. Naturally, she didn't see what a family with many wives and concubines looked like. Therefore, she naturally couldn't care less about the harm concubines caused to the legal wife. The legal wife had to pretend to be generous and take in concubines for her husband. Ning Shu didn't directly say, "Which one of these madams do you think is the easiest to get along with?" "I think it's Madam Li. I heard that Madam Li's son is about the same age as your brother." Lingyun was stunned for a moment. Her face turned red, and she said embarrassedly, "Mother, don't be embarrassed. Men should get married when they grow up, and women should get married when they grow up," Ning Shu said. "It's good to have more contact with these madams. When you get married in the future, you can be mentally prepared. Your future husband can't only have you as his only woman." "It's good to listen more," Ning Shu said indifferently. Lingyun's heart was suddenly covered with a layer of shadow. Can't I be like father and only have mother as his wife? How can these men be so fickle? Lingyun couldn't continue speaking because her father also had a concubine now. Moreover, he was in his old age and had entered a field of flowers. However, Yolai's actions hurt Wei Lingxian more than those men who had many wives and concubines hurt their wives. Since he couldn't do it, why did he give Wei Lingxian such hope? Chapter 397. Ning Shu didn't care about the gloominess in Lingyun's heart at all. She even stabbed a knife into Lingyun's heart. An unmarried man also has maidservants by his side. Before you get married, the man already has women by his side. After you get married, these maidservants will be promoted to concubines. Your father doesn't have any maidservants by his side because he often fights, Ning Shu said indifferently. Lingyun's expression became even more depressed, as if she had stepped on feces. Ning Shu shouted in a daze, "Mother, of course, you will also be loving with your husband, although you will share your husband with other people." Ning Shu stabbed Lingyun's heart again and again. Ning Shu said again, "You are the daughter of General Zhenwei, so you will naturally be the legal wife, so you must take care of the family matters seriously. When you get married, your in-laws will be your family. There are some things in the general's manner that can't be controlled. A married daughter is like spilled water." Lingyun was speechless. Ning Shu ignored Lingyun's depression and began to discuss the marriage of her son, Yu, with the old madam. The old madam had taken a fancy to Minister Su's daughter, but Ning Shu immediately rejected her. In the plot, Su Li was Yu's wife, but she held Mingzhu in high esteem. She even praised Mingzhu for her bravery in love and her undying devotion. Mingzhu was clearly the woman in her husband's heart, but she still sided with her love rival and even went against Wei Lingxian's real mother-in-law, accusing her mother-in-law of being cruel to Mingzhu. Another woman who couldn't distinguish right from wrong, a woman who was naive. Ning Shu directly stated his reason. This Su Li is Minister Su's only daughter, so it's inevitable that she will be spoiled. Yu is the eldest son, so his wife will be the eldest daughter-in-law. In the future, she will have to bear the heavy responsibility of the rear courtyard of the general's manor. I have seen this woman before, she is a naive and lively child. When the old madam heard this, she removed this Su Li, naive and stupid, she didn't understand the ways of the world. How could she manage the inner courtyard well and deal with the other madams? Did she offend everyone? Ning Shu had never thought of setting any rules for Mingzhu, nor did he want Mingzhu to greet him. With regards to Yu's love for Mingzhu, Ning Shu also treated himself as blind and did not see anything. Regarding this, Mingzhu felt extremely happy. Although Madame did not say anything, Mingzhu felt that Madame had already forgiven her. Lingyun, who was supposed to protect Mingzhu in the storyline, was intentionally or unintentionally making things difficult for her. Moreover, Ning Shu saw that Lingyun looked like she was practicing. She was probably practicing how to deal with a concubine. For example, if Mingzhu wanted to eat something, and Lingyun would ask the servants to delay the delivery. When Mingzhu asked about it, and Lingyun would say that the general's estate did not have money and could not afford such expensive things. Even the old madam did not have money to eat bird's nest. Mingzhu first made a scene out of being wronged, and then Anyu came out to defend Mingzhu. However, An Lingyun directly said, "Father, you've been demoted, and your salary isn't much. The general's residence isn't rich now." Hearing his daughter's words, Anyu could not straighten his back. In the end, the matter was left unsettled, and Mingzhu asked her personal maid to buy it herself. Although she was able to eat what she wanted to eat with her own money, Mingzhu felt very uncomfortable. An Lingyun saw the good things in Mingzhu's courtyard and felt very uncomfortable. Many of the things here were bought with her own money. Now, the general's estate was living frugally, but Mingzhu had so many good things here. A concubine had more things than her mother's house. Ningxu only silently watched An Lingyun's change. So the stick had to hit oneself to know the pain. Now, would An Lingyun still warmly welcome Mingzhu into the family of the general's estate? People were selfish. When it came to their own things, they would work hard to fight for them. Now that the general's estate was doing worse than before, but Mingzhu was still doing very well, how could An Lingyun continue to watch? Anyu and Mingzhu had been lovey-dovey for a while. In the past, they used to be lovey-dovey together every day, but recently, Anyu would occasionally sleep in the study. Ningxu looked at Anyu's slightly yellow face. He frowned and looked a little distressed. Mingzhu's expression also looked a little bitter. Ningxu laughed wildly in his heart. Time was a butcher's knife, enough to obliterate all true love and emotions. Anyu and Mingzhu both died in the end, achieving an unprecedented period of true love. What was death? What was death? Live and see how long you can love each other. Only love that can withstand the ravages of time is true love. Lust, with love, there will naturally be lust. It was just that the current Anyu did not seem to be able to satisfy Mingzhu. Since you're old, you should be more honest. Don't act like an old man and think that you're a hot-blooded young man. Recently, Anyu was very distressed, very distressed. Every time after making love, Anyu would feel very satisfied, but Mingzhu would not feel satisfied. He wanted to do it again, but for some reason, his body was not strong enough. Facing Mingzhu's bitter eyes, Anyu was in a sorry state and even reduced the number of times they made love. Anyu felt that there was a problem with his body. It was not that he could not do it, he could do it, but he could not do it for long. Previously, he thought that it was because he was too excited. After all, Mingzhu's body was so young and tender. But after doing it with Mingzhu so many times, it was the same situation every time. This made Anyu feel a little afraid. He even secretly went to find a doctor. The doctor felt his pulse and said that his kidney was weak. He prescribed some kidney-nourishing medicine for Anyu to boil and drink it. In order to fool others, Anyu pretended that he was sick and wanted to drink the medicine. After knowing that Anyu was sick, Mingzhu started crying as if Anyu was going to pass away. This made the old lady's face turn ugly. However, Anyu was very touched. He felt that Mingzhu was concerned about him. In front of everyone, they hugged and hugged again. Anyu said some words of love while wiping Mingzhu's tears. Finally, Mingzhu's tears turned into a smile. Ningxu was speechless. He was speechless. There was his mother, his wife, and his daughter in this house. Couldn't he be more careful? How could he be unable to control himself so much? Ningxu sighed. He felt that he was going to be alone for the rest of his life. Love was simply something that made people collapse. That was true. She could not even guarantee her life. Love was something that she could not hope for. Anything was more stable and better than love. In any case, Ningxu was extremely disgusted. Were the two of them planning to roll on the spot? Ning Shu smelled the medicine that the servant girl brought in. The corner of his mouth curled up, but he did not say anything. And Lingyun saw Ming Zhu's actions and felt even more disgusted. The moment she left the room, she scolded, "Vixen." And Lingyun had long been displeased with Ming Zhu's house. Thinking that they were all using the general's residence's money, and Lingyun's heart ached. She would always find excuses to steal the things in Ming Zhu's house. Ming Zhu thought that An Lingyun had forgiven her and generously gave all the good things to An Lingyun. However, every time An Lingyun came to ask for things, Ming Zhu would be unhappy. These things were all hers. What right did she have to ask her for them? Chapter 398. Now, Ning Shu basically didn't have to do anything. With An Lingyun as the housekeeper, he didn't have to serve anew. It was as if he was enjoying his old age in advance. Ning Shu watched as An Lingyun and Ming Zhu got into a conflict over a white jade hairpin. Ming Zhu's usual trick was to cry and kneel down to scare people. An Lingyun followed Ning Shu and always attended banquets. Naturally, she knew a lot. No matter what, Ming Zhu was an elder. If she knelt down to her, her reputation would be ruined. An Lingyun felt that Ming Zhu was vicious and used this method to ruin her reputation. So, when Ming Zhu knelt down, An Lingyun also knelt down. An Lingyun's actions made Ming Zhu feel as if she had swallowed a fly. She felt wronged and hateful. Why did An Lingyun treat her like this? She was so good to An Lingyun and gave her all the good things. Why was An Lingyun still so greedy? The general's residence was so warm before, and An Lingyun was her friend. Why did she become like this? She already explained that she couldn't help it. She wanted to integrate into the general's residence, but why did An Lingyun do this? Ming Zhu felt that An Lingyun betrayed their friendship. Of course, in the end, the conflict still needed An Yu to mediate. An Yu naturally sided with the person he loved deeply. This white jade hairpin was naturally given to Ming Zhu. An Lingyun was very angry. This was her father. Why was he always siding with this woman? Why? At this moment, An Lingyun was just like Wei Lingxian back then. She was jealous, hateful, dissatisfied, and hurt. Her father sided with Ming Zhu without even thinking about it. He didn't even ask about what had happened. Just like that, he sided with Ming Zhu. An Lingyun felt hurt. Ning Shu saw An Lingyun kneeling on the ground. Her body was trembling with anger, but An Yu was holding Ming Zhu. He sighed and walked over. Ning Shu pulled An Lingyun up from the ground. An Lingyun turned and saw her mother. The tears that she had been holding back immediately fell. Ning Shu looked at An Yu and said, "Husband, the general's residence's shop is not doing well. After you were demoted, your salary is not as much as before. The general's residence is not doing well. Now that Lingyun is in charge, she wants to save a little." This white jade hairpin was bought by Lingyun for Ming Zhu. Now, Lingyun wants it back and sells it to support the general's residence's expenses. When An Yu saw his first wife, he was in a daze for a moment. He felt that he had not seen her for a long time. Usually, this woman did not have any sense of existence. He doted on Ming Zhu, but she did not say anything. An Yu felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. If the other party had made a ruckus to stop him and Ming Zhu, he would not have felt guilty at all. Now that he heard her calmly speak the truth, An Yu felt ashamed. An Yu took the white jade hairpin from Ming Zhu's hands and gave it to Lingyun. Ming Zhu's expression instantly darkened. This wasn't about the hairpin. Now that Wei Lingxian had said this, An Yu wouldn't give her the hairpin. This made Ming Zhu very uncomfortable and felt a sense of crisis. An Lingyun held the white jade hairpin in her hand, her eyes filled with deep mockery. Ming Zhu knelt in front of Ning Shu with a plop. Ning Shu looked at Ming Zhu coldly and generously accepted Ming Zhu's kowtow. She was just a concubine now. Did she really think that she was Princess Mingzhu? Once she knelt, others would be terrified and uneasy. Madam, it's my fault. I didn't think that the general's mansion would be like this. I'll take out my own money tomorrow, Mingzhu said very profoundly. Ning Shu smiled faintly. Very good. It's good that you think that way. After all, you're also a member of the general's mansion. Mingzhu's face revealed an expression that was both smiling and crying. She kowtowed to Ning Shu. Thank you, madam, for accepting me. Thank you, madam. Ning Shu's smile became even more dignified and virtuous. Ning Shu pulled An Lingyun to his courtyard. He took out the hairpin from the box and gave it to An Lingyun. An Lingyun hurriedly waved her hands. I don't want mother's hairpin. I did it on purpose. I wanted Mingzhu's hairpin on purpose. Ning Shu pulled An Lingyun's hand and said, before doing anything, you have to find a good reason for yourself. You have to put yourself in an advantageous position. This way, you won't fall into the trap of making things difficult for others. Your father dotes on Mingzhu, so naturally, whatever Mingzhu says is right. You're a girl, so you shouldn't get involved in your father's backyard. Let your father dote on whoever he dotes on. But mother, I can't accept it in my heart. An Lingyun stomped her feet. Right now, father only has eyes for Mingzhu. Could it be that you can't accept it? Ning Shu looked at An Lingyun. You have to keep your cool. What good will it do you if you go head to head like this? So what if you vent the anger in your heart? Your father still favors Mingzhu. Don't make trouble with Mingzhu. One is a concubine, and the other is a junior. It's not good for your reputation. Ning Shu instructed An Lingyun. An Lingyun naturally knew that her mother was doing this for her own good. She nodded and didn't say anything. Not long later, Mingzhu personally took her own money to Ning Shu's courtyard and gave a bag of silver to him. Ning Shu let An Lingyun take it. An Lingyun curled her lips. It was just this little bit of money. Previously, when Mingzhu came to the general's estate, she used banknotes to buy things. This little bit of money wasn't even a fraction of the banknotes. When Mingzhu left, her footsteps were light. She clearly thought that her and An Yu's love had received everyone's blessings and support. Ning Shu shook his head. Bickering with people who lived in their own world was just asking for trouble. Moreover, as long as he said something, even if he said it a little louder, she would immediately kneel down and repent, constantly begging for forgiveness. I was wrong. I apologized. You should forgive me. If you don't forgive me, then it's your fault. It's your fault. There was nothing more painful than having their true love shattered. Although the people in the general's estate had supported her and An Yu's love, Mingzhu now had a new worry, and that was the intimacy between her and An Yu. It was like this every time. She only felt a little, but the lovemaking was already over. Sometimes, Mingzhu felt so bad that she would cling on to An Yu, but An Yu couldn't do anything about it. He would always push her away until he was tired. There was a shadow in Mingzhu's heart. She thought that An Yu had gone to find another woman. However, ever since she came to the general's estate, An Yu had always been with her. The two of them had never gone to Wei Lingxian's courtyard. Although she didn't want to admit it, Mingzhu felt that An Yu wasn't good enough. An Yu was Mingzhu's first man. She didn't know what other men were like. Due to a woman's shame, Mingzhu didn't tell him her true feelings. She didn't want An Yu to think that she was a loose woman. An Yu could sense Mingzhu's dissatisfaction, but he was powerless. He drank so much medicine, but it was useless. An Yu didn't know what was wrong with his body. This feeling made him very afraid. Chapter 399. An Yu knew that if this continued, there would be a day when Mingzhu would complain. He loved Mingzhu and wanted to give her the best things, but what was wrong with his body? It had never been like this before. And you looked for a lot of doctors and prescribed a lot of medicine, but it didn't work. Even if he ate the medicine prescribed by a famous doctor, he still couldn't change the problem of not being able to last long. Ning Shu watched silently as Yu drank the medicine in big bowls. He ate more than 3 meals a day. His face was green with excrement, and his expression was extremely ugly. Ning Shu looked dignified and virtuous on the surface, but in his heart, he laughed wildly with his hands on his waist. Especially when he saw that Yu often slept in the study in Mingzhu's resentful look, Ning Shu only sneered in his heart. The current Yu could no longer love you and fuck you to death. He could no longer make Mingzhu want to live and die. Hee hee. Ning Shu really wanted to stretch to express his joy, but considering his dignified and magnanimous image, Ning Shu gave up. Although Yu was young and fast, Mingzhu was still pregnant. Moreover, Mingzhu did not know that she was pregnant. She vomited profusely while eating. When the doctor came to take a look, he said that she was already 2 months pregnant. Although the old lady did not like Mingzhu, she was still her grandson in her stomach. It was always a good thing to have more grandchildren. She even took out her own private money to buy a lot of tonics for Mingzhu to take good care of her body. When the old lady saw Mingzhu's weak appearance and her body did not look very good, she was a little worried and hoped that the child would be born safely. Yu was very excited when he found out that his beloved was pregnant. He was even happier than when he was a father for the first time. He hugged Mingzhu and spun around twice. The old lady was so scared that she quickly asked him to put her down. When she found out that Mingzhu was pregnant, Lingyun was unhappy. Now, Lingyun was not as innocent as before. She thought a lot about the arrival of this child. The first thing she thought about was that this child might threaten her and her brother's position. Although it was a son of a concubine, it had the right to inherit the general's residence's things. If it was a girl, it would be fine. If it was a boy, then it would be a threat to her brother. Moreover, seeing how happy her father was, Lingyun was very worried. She was afraid that Yu would unconditionally side with this younger brother or sister. Seeing her mother's carefree appearance, Lingyun couldn't help but ask, "Mother, aren't you worried? What are you worried about?" "There's nothing to worry about." Ning Shu was actually a little surprised that Mingzhu was pregnant. In the storyline, Mingzhu was not pregnant. Actually, this child didn't have any conflict with Yu and Lingyun. Ning Shu didn't want to care about this child. Lingyun stomped her feet and didn't say anything. Her eyes flickered and she seemed to be struggling. Ning Shu looked at her and said, "Lingyun, this child is your brother. There is a big age gap between you and him. There are some things you can do and some things you can't. Do you understand?" Ning Shu looked at Lingyun's expression. There was struggle and hesitation between her brows. It was obvious that she minded this child a lot. Brothers who didn't share the same mother, this feeling was really strange. Hearing Ning Shu's words, Lingyun let out a long sigh and said, "Mother, I understand." In essence, Lingyun was kind. She could fight for what she needed, but the premise was that she couldn't hurt others. Mingzhu's pregnancy made Yu very happy. He had his own child. More importantly, he wouldn't be intimate with Mingzhu for a long time. To be honest, Yu was actually a little afraid of being intimate with Mingzhu now. He was afraid of seeing her disappointed eyes. Yu wanted to take advantage of Mingzhu's pregnancy to nurse his body back to health and then give Mingzhu a new him. Mingzhu was pregnant, so she seemed a little delicate. In addition, her body was a little weak. She would vomit whatever she ate. She would always clench her fists and hit Yu. Yu would always smile and let Mingzhu hit him without complaint. It made Mingzhu feel sweet and painful. Ning Shu didn't pay attention to the two people who were entangled with each other. He called Yu, who was in the army in Lizhou, back. He said that he had arranged a marriage for him and asked him to come back to see. Yu ran back excitedly. Then, he bumped into his father supporting Princess Ming-Zhu in the garden. Princess Ming-Zhu was clutching her belly with one hand. And Yu was instantly dumbfounded. He didn't understand what was going on. Why was his father so intimate with Princess Ming-Zhu? Well, who the hell could tell him what was going on? The old lady hadn't seen her grandson for a long time. Especially after so many things had happened in the general's mansion, the old lady cried when she saw Yu. Ning Shu saw that Yu's entire person had changed a lot. He had turned black, and there was a light scar on his face. Furthermore, he looked much stronger than before, and his entire person looked much sharper. Sure enough, he had changed a lot. Yu was puzzled about the matter between Yu and Princess Ming-Zhu. Especially when he came back, his father didn't even ask about him. Yu asked his sister about his father and Princess Ming-Zhu. Lingyun hated Princess Ming-Zhu very much now. When she heard her brother call that cheap concubine a princess, she immediately spat and said, "She's not a princess now. She's just a concubine." Then, Lingyun told her brother about how she had run to the battlefield and what had happened between her and Yu. She also said that Ming-Zhu was now 2 months pregnant. After hearing this, Yu was stunned. The woman who was as gentle as water in his heart was suddenly disillusioned. In the blink of an eye, she had become his father's concubine and was about to have a child. Yu pursed his lips and sighed in his heart. What kind of courage did it take to go to the battlefield? If she ran to the army of Lizhou, she would definitely be dragged into the camp by the valiant veterans and treated as a military prostitute. During this period of time in the army of Lizhou, Yu suffered a lot. There was no reason, no injustice, only strength and experience. When he first went there, he was not convinced. When he argued, he was directly beaten down. When he fell to the ground, everyone around him ran up and trampled on him. The wound on his face was caused by bandits when he was suppressing bandits. That knife almost took his life. The last thing that flashed in his mind was Ming-Zhu's face, but he didn't expect it to be such a situation. Yu only felt that it was ridiculous. Ning Shu called Yu to the front and said, "Your grandmother and I have found a woman for you to come back and take a look." Yu looked at his mother. Her face was calm as she talked to him about things. She didn't look sad at all. She even stood up when the general's residence was in danger. "Mother, you make the decision." Yu said with some disinterest. "A woman who can take care of the family like mother is enough." Ning Shu looked at Yu and asked directly, "Are you still thinking about Ming-Zhu?" Chapter 400. Yu's hidden thoughts were found out by her mother. For a moment, she was so embarrassed that she did not know what to say, especially now that Ming-Zhu was her father's woman. I didn't," Yu stuttered. She saw her mother looking at her like that. "You're quibbling. Keep quibbling." Ning Shu looked at Yu with his eyes. Yu was a bit embarrassed. She spread her hands and said, "I used to like gentle women like Ming-Zhu, but now that she's father's woman, I don't have any thoughts." Ning Shu was a bit surprised. This child was very infatuated with Ming-Zhu. Now that he had changed a lot, it did not seem like that. Ning Shu was glad that she had sent Yu away earlier, before he had fallen deeply in love with Ming-Zhu. She reckoned that the environment had also affected Yu a little. The Yu now looked smarter and more tactful than before. Her face and hands were also injured. A strange question suddenly appeared in Ning Shu's heart. Looking at Yu's lower body, the Lizhou army was full of rough men. Usually, there were no women. With Yu's gigolo appearance, would she be pressed down? The more he thought about it, the more likely it was. Ning Shu looked at Yu with a strange expression. Yu was speechless. Coming out of her mother's courtyard, Yu bumped into Ming-Zhu, who was standing in the corridor feeding the fish. Yu wanted to avoid arousing suspicion, so she turned and left. "Yu." Mingzhu called out to Anyu. Anyu turned to look at Mingzhu and called out, "Aunt." When Mingzhu heard Anyu call her, her face froze. After all, she was younger than Anyu. However, did this mean that she acknowledged her? "Are you doing well in the Lizho army?" Mingzhu asked. Anyu cupped her fist and said, "Thank you for your concern, Aunt. Everything is going well. You don't have to be polite with me. I've always treated you as a friend." Mingzhu saw Anyu's distant appearance and felt bad. She also saw that there were no longer obvious scars on Anyu's face. She said, "It looks like you're not doing well. You've suffered a lot." Mingzhu took 2 steps towards Anyu. Anyu saw her supporting her waist as she walked towards her. She immediately took 2 steps back and said, "It's nothing for a man to suffer a bit. Actually, at that time, I did not approve of you joining the Li Zhou army." Mingzhu said, "I do not understand why Madam would send you to such a difficult place." Anyu frowned and said, "Auntie, continue feeding the fish. I'll be leaving first." Mingzhu looked at Anyu's back and furrowed her brows in grievance. Why was he like this? Mingzhu sighed. She felt that Anyu was avoiding her because Lingyun had said bad things about her in front of her brother. Mingzhu rubbed her stomach. Suddenly, she did not know why, but her heart felt uncomfortable and tired, especially when she saw the tall and sturdy Anyu. Her young body made Mingzhu's heart feel strange and restless. "Mingzhu, you're here. I've been looking for you everywhere." Anyu walked over and said worriedly to Mingzhu. Because Anyu had been drinking medicine a lot recently, there was a medicinal smell all over his body. When Mingzhu smelled this smell, she immediately covered her mouth and retched. Anyu saw that Mingzhu was vomiting uncomfortably and immediately wanted to reach out and pat her back. However, the closer Anyu got, the more uncomfortable Mingzhu felt. She quickly used her hand to block Anyu. "Don't come over. I want to vomit." Anyu's face froze. He stood there in a daze and did not move. His heart was in turmoil. He was hurt by Mingzhu's attitude. Mingzhu saw that Anyu was in a daze. After vomiting, she said, "You have a medicinal smell on you. I feel a bit nauseous." Anyu pursed his lips. After a while, he said, "Go take a bath first." After saying that, his body stiffened and he turned around to leave. Mingzhu looked at Anyu's lonely back. She opened her mouth, but in the end, she did not call out to Anyu. Ningxu did not know about the matter between Anyu and Mingzhu. He was currently with the old madam bringing Anyu to see his future wife. Ningxu felt that it was very strange. He had not even gotten married yet, but now he was looking for a daughter-in-law. Anyu was very satisfied with his future wife. She was a gentle and beautiful woman. She looked like a reasonable woman. Ningxu was also very satisfied because the current Anyu was not infatuated with Mingzhu. Anyu decided to return to the Lizho army after getting married. The old madam also had the same idea. She clearly felt that her body was not very good. She wanted to see her great-grandson and die without regrets. The group of people returned to the general's residence. They saw Mingzhu waiting at the door. Mingzhu's gaze swept across Anyu's face. Ningxu asked, "Madam, did you leave the residence for something today?" Ningxu smiled and said, "Today, we went to see Anyu's fiancé. Soon, Anyu will get married." "That's right. I will have a beautiful sister-in-law soon." Lingyun smiled very happily. It was as if she was demonstrating to Mingzhu. Previously, she treated Mingzhu as her future sister-in-law. However, she did not expect Mingzhu to shamelessly like her father and do so many ridiculous things. Now, when she went out to attend banquets, she would hear people laughing at the general's residence. Because of Mingzhu, the general's residence even looked at her strangely. When Mingzhu heard this news, she took 2 steps back in shock. Then, she forced a smile and said to Anyu, "Congratulations. Thank you, Auntie. And you said politely. Ming Zhu turned and left. The old madam supported herself with her walking stick and said unhappily, unruly thing. Ning Shu raised his eyebrows. He felt that Ming Zhu's current state was not right. Could it be that pregnant women were all strange? Because both sides were satisfied, and Yu and Lin Yanlei's marriage was quickly put on the agenda. The whole family gathered together and chose an auspicious date to propose marriage. And Yu was a little dissatisfied. This was because no one in the family had informed his son that he was going to get married. After a few people discussed it, they informed him. Ming Zhu sat on the side and did not say anything. From time to time, she would look at the wheat-skinned Yu. His body was incomparably tall. The scar on his face gave him a hint of bravery. His aura was even stronger than his father's. Ming Zhu did not know if it was an illusion, but Yu was a little dispirited. That dispirited feeling made Ming Zhu feel that Yu was not her god. He was not her master. Yu felt that the whole family was ignoring him. His dignity as the head of the family was being challenged. He said, "This Lin Yanlei lost her mother early. She has a younger brother. She cannot marry a woman who has lost her parents." Ning Shu almost laughed out loud. "You are the one who slept with a woman who is in her mourning period. You have the nerve to talk about others." "Father, I am very satisfied with this Lin Yanlei. She is a sensible woman who knows how to take care of people. She raised her younger brother. Soon, her younger brother will be taking the imperial examination. She is a smart and capable woman." Ming Zhu's face was dark and gloomy. "You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.